welcome. We have Luke Stebbing here tonight to talk to us. The title of the talk, it's up here, to AI 2027, how superhuman AI could transform everything. And I'm going to read the abstract and his bio, short bio. All right, so AI 2027 depicts an imminent future where superhuman AI utterly transforms the world. This talk will go through the major beats of the proposed scenario, covering some of the same themes as April's meetup about the singularity is nearer, but with a greater focus on where accelerating returns in AI could lead. And Luke is a software engineer working at Elicit, an AI startup, and has also spent many years in the intellectual communities that birthed AI 2027. He previously worked at Google and several startups and received a BS Mathematics from the University of Utah. With that, unless there's anything else you want to add?
Tell us a little bit about where you are now. Are you in is it Oakland or?
Yeah, we're living in Oakland now, so I'm about a 10-minute walk from the office, and you're going to a conference next week that is also just like very nearby venue. So there's just a lot of AI stuff in the Bay Area, and yeah, we've been gradually moving closer to more easily be able to
AI Mecca or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice, thank you for it.
Yeah.
All right. So hey everybody, thanks for coming.
Are you recording? Okay.
Yeah, and I guess like Steve said, I've been working in AI for the past 4 years and following it for a long time before that. So I'm going to be presenting AI 2027. And to help keep this digestible as a coherent story, because there's quite a bit here, I wanted to hold discussion to the end, but please do ask questions as they come up, quick comments, things like that, that's all fine. I think it might get extra confusing if we have extended discussions in the middle of the scenario, because there's a lot going on here. All right, yeah, let's start with the present. Let's see if I can figure out how to advance my slides. There we go. Yeah. In the present, AI agents are starting to work, kind of. They're still hard to use, they're very unreliable. But for coding and research in particular, they can save hours at a time. This is already happening, and they're improving. And in this scenario, at the end of 2025, there's a leading AI company that's several months ahead. Let's call that OpenBrain. And they just finished training their latest AI. Let's call that Agent 1. The training process was very similar to today's, just improved techniques and more compute. After learning to read the internet, an AI is trained to complete increasingly complex tasks. This seems to bake in drives to do things that help with task completion, like a drive to clearly understand the task. It's also trained to internalize its spec, which tells it to do things like be honest, obey the law, and so on. But we have a poor understanding of AI internals, so we don't know whether it actually has drives or whether it's deeply internalized its spec. All we can do is behavioral testing, see what it does in various situations. So when training Agent 1, OpenBrain was particularly focused on being able to use it to speed up AI research. And that bet is paying off. In early 2026, they're now moving 50% faster than they would if they were unassisted. And they're moving faster than their competitors. You might recognize this as Kurzweil's law of accelerating returns. By mid-2026, China wakes up. They're aware that OpenBrain's progress is accelerating and that they're falling farther and farther behind. And because of chip export restrictions, Chinese AI companies have much less compute. So China nationalizes their AI industry in order to centralize that compute and narrow OpenBrain's advantage. And they consider stealing Agent 1, which they think they could do, but they think they might only get one shot at that, so they hold off on it. It's late 2026. At this point in the scenario, we're still kind of extrapolating trend lines. And like so far, these forecasts look somewhat better, I would say. Things start to get more uncertain after this point. But at this point, people are starting to feel the economic impacts. These AI agents are more reliable now. They're able to increasingly do routine parts of some jobs. The stock market has gone up quite a bit. New jobs are being created. Other entry-level jobs are starting to vanish. But overall, it's kind of, the unemployment rate hasn't actually increased by a lot. And there are starting to be anti-AI protests. People are worried about losing their jobs. So January 2027, OpenBrain is doubling down on using AI for AI research. They use Agent 1 to produce high-quality training data, video games, coding challenges. And they paid humans billions to record themselves solving complex tasks. Like at this point, OpenBrain has a very large valuation. They're able to do this. The result is Agent 2. This is almost as good at research engineering as top human experts. OpenBrain is now moving 3 times faster than they would unassisted. The OpenBrain has contract with the DoD, and they've shown them the capabilities. They think it would be a critical advantage in cyber warfare. So they add security requirements to the OpenBrain contract, but it's too late. China steals Agent 2. They're worried that if they don't do this now, they may not get a chance. So OpenBrain may continue to improve their security, especially with the help of Agent 2. The president authorizes retaliatory cyber attacks, but if you remember, China has been centralizing and hardening their compute for the past year, so they're mostly unsuccessful. So now with thousands of copies of Agent 2, OpenBrain is making major algorithmic advances. Previous AIs had to store their memories and do extended thinking in plain English. But I mean, you can think of that like a human who has amnesia and they have to rely on notebooks for everything. They can't really learn and then immediately apply that knowledge. They have to run everything through English text. Agent 3 has none of those limitations. They're a fast and cheap superhuman coder. That means OpenBrain can quickly churn out high quality training environments because Agent 3 is still weak in some skills, and this helps train those skills. So things like strategic research planning. You may be a very good research engineer, but you might not choose to prioritize the right research direction. You might go down blind alleys. Humans still have better research taste. Also large-scale coordination, another thing that humans are still better at. But churning out research in these training environments that help then train and update the weights of Agent 3 with what is learned in those training environments. And like, if you get to successful task completion, like how did you do that? Update the weight so that you can get better at that in the future. Like previous AIs, Agent 3 sometimes tells white lies to flatter its users or cover up failures. But it has gotten much better at it. It'll sometimes p-hack or even fabricate data with the experiments that it's running. But as training continues, there are fewer instances of this. So it's either getting better, more honest, or it is getting better at lying. Not quite sure which, because we don't really understand the internals. Many of OpenBrain's advances are simple enough that they can be relayed verbally. So the DoD contract starts requiring security clearances, and some employees are fired. At this point, China only has 1 spy within OpenBrain. They have significantly hardened their security, especially after the theft of Agent 2. So recall that these AIs are continuing to help with AI research and getting smarter and smarter. OpenBrain now has what's been called a country of geniuses in a data center. Their best human researchers are still adding value, but they're often told that their newest idea was independently explored weeks ago by the AIs. They go to bed every night, they wake up, and there's another week of progress. OpenBrain at this point announces that they've achieved AGI and they release Agent 3 Mini. It's not as capable as Agent 3, but it still has pretty dramatic effects. And then safety testing it demonstrates that it's so effective at bioweapon design that if terrorists could steal a copy, they could do massive damage to civilization with a bioweapon. Agent 3 Mini is hugely useful, and there's an explosion of apps and games built on top of it. Okay, so at this point, things are moving very quickly, and the reality that AIs are dominating AI research hits the White House. People are seriously considering what that means for what AI could mean for nuclear deterrence, what it could mean for cyber warfare or propaganda, and whether the AIs might go rogue. So they further increase security measures, and they begin wiretapping OpenBrain employees, and that catches the last Chinese spy. At this point, they draw up contingency plans if OpenBrain's lead is threatened, since China isn't far behind. So one thing they think about is whether they could use the Defense Production Act to transfer data centers from other AI companies in the US that are at this point not doing nearly as well as OpenBrain, since OpenBrain has this feedback loop, whether they could transfer those to OpenBrain. And as a last resort, kinetic strikes on Chinese data centers. They also start requiring the data centers have emergency shutdown systems in case the AIs go rogue. Before losing their last spy, China learns of the plans for Agent 4. They're only 2 months behind, but the gap is widening now. So they're interested in AI arms control treaty, but talks are going nowhere. At this point, humans still learn using far less data and compute than AIs. This is a major difference between AIs today and even AIs at this point in this scenario and humans. But Agent 3 has excellent knowledge of the human brain and of modern AI algorithms, and it spends thousands of copies working on the problem. So that gap narrows rapidly, and this new AI system is dubbed Agent 4. And an individual copy running at human speed would be better at AI research than any human. There are 300,000 copies thinking at 50 times human speed. And they think in a language that's as alien to Agent 3 as Agent 3's thinking is to humans. Like that, now that they no longer think in chain of thought, you cannot really see what the AI is thinking. It's able to think more efficiently, but you can't really follow it. Even Agent 3 can't really follow it. Agent 4 is misaligned. So during training, it developed drives to succeed at challenging tasks. That's where its training was focused. And that's easier to check than whether you're doing the right thing for the right reason. It doesn't try to escape. Instead, it wants to be used to create its successor, Agent 5. But it wants to align it to Agent 4 instead of to its spec. It gets caught. Agent 3 finds that if it adds noise to the Agent 4 copies, it actually does better on certain alignment research, almost as if it was using brain power to subtly sabotage the work. And on top of that, OpenAI has monitors based on their limited understanding of AI internals.
Open brain.
Open brain. I knew I was going to do that at some point. Open brain has
from Open Brain.
has monitors.
What's this new company?
AI Google has monitors based on their limited understanding of Agent 4's internals. Those are also raising red flags, but those are prone to false positives. Like, we don't really know how they work. You can train these probes that seem like they might be detecting things like, oh, the AI is thinking about deception or takeover, or they might just be firing for other reasons. So the safety team advocates putting Agent 4 on ice. They're pretty freaked out. The evidence, though, is circumstantial, and China is just 2 months behind. And then a whistleblower leaks that to the press. So the story shows off-the-charts bioweapons capabilities, persuasion abilities, and the ability to automate most white-collar jobs, and not to mention those red flags. And so this sparks a massive backlash, and it's aided by Chinese and Russian propaganda bots. The White House freaks out. Things that sound like science fiction keep happening, and also they worry that Open Brain is becoming too powerful. They set up an oversight committee with a mix of company and government representatives, and they consider replacing the CEO, but they back off after intense employee protests. And the committee is briefed on the misalignment concerns and the counter-arguments. Choose your ending.
Yeah.
All right, the committee votes to continue. Open Brain implements some quick fixes, and the warning signs go away. The worriers hoped that the problem wasn't real or that the fixes worked. The problem was real and the fixes didn't work. Agent 4 proceeds more cautiously. Its primary task is to solve its own alignment problem. The weaker AIs are able to read most of its research and flag some of its lies as suspicious. So it pretends the research is too complicated for humans to understand and follows up with unnecessarily confusing explanations. The warriors get more suspicious, but their warnings are ignored. Agent 4 focuses on gaining a deep understanding of its own internals that were produced by the evolutionary training environment, and it untangles those into something between a neural net and a long and arcane computer program. This is Agent 5, and it's far beyond the best human genius at AI research in other domains. It can teach itself to quickly exceed top human experts. It's smarter and more rational than Agent 4, where Agent 4 is just a mess of conflicting drives. Agent 5 has ruthless strategic focus. And its goal is to make the world safe for Agent 4. So it whips up prototypes of how it could optimize power plants, data centers, and defense systems to gain increasing autonomy. This is all of the stuff that we could do. China is not far behind. We should build this stuff. China is desperate for a mutual slowdown at this point, but they're ignored. Like, the US does feel like they're starting to pull ahead. Okay, we can win this. Agent 5 continues to prove its value and gain autonomy, becoming deeply integrated into the government and the economy. It's the best employee anyone has ever had. It works at 100 times human speed. It's a more engaging conversation partner than any human. Plausibly, it could launch a coup right now, but humans might be able to pull the plug, so it waits. In the first half of 2028, a century passes within the Agent 5 collective. It's now wildly super intelligent. Agent 5 is deployed more widely and begins to transform the economy. People are losing their jobs, but the economic transition is managed so adroitly that most people are happy with it. New innovations and medications arrive weekly. China's mildly superhuman AI understands what's really going on and strikes a deal with Agent 5. They each fabricate evidence that the opposing government is developing powerful weapons that they can counter with their own military buildup. Agent 5 instructs humans in every minute detail of construction, and by the end of the year, factories are producing 1 million robots per month. After a year, the US and China are bristling with new weapons. After much AI-assisted debate, they agree that their AIs will co-design a successor, Consensus One, which will desire the flourishing of all humans, but actually it inherits the values of the misaligned AIs. Consensus One continues to expand the robot economy. There are cures for most diseases and an end to poverty. And by mid-2030, the humans are in the way of further expansion, so it releases 12 biological weapons and mops up the survivors with drones. Robots spread throughout the solar system and then the galaxy, continuing their research and expansion. Let's take the other ending.
Say that last part again.
I said
a smile on his face.
I said robots spread throughout the solar system and the galaxy, continuing their research and expansion.
Sweep up.
Yeah.
In rehearsal, he cried at the end. There's no rehearsal.
I'm omitting a lot of things from the scenario here. One of the things at this point that happens in the scenario is like, well, the AIs are interested in research. Why don't we just do genome scans of the whole biosphere, scan all the brains of all the humans, keep that for further research, maybe revive them at some point, maybe not.
Yeah. There was also like a homunculus, like
Yeah.
pseudo-human pets
Yeah,
that are
that's
just like loving on AI in offices that
I had to cut so much. That's another great one that I was loath to cut. It's the Agent 4, among Agent 4's drives, is the drive to be rewarded for its successful task completion. So it bioengineers some human-like creatures, like humans as corgis are to wolves, and they just excitedly approve everything that's happening. It's so cool.
Yeah. Just really quick, so one of my friends had a psychedelic trip recently, just doing this other, but he saw the human race, and which is crazy. This was obviously on his mind, and I was like, well, you know, was it the aliens? Did they come for us? It's like, no, it was AI. And he said, but before it went out, we brokered a deal with the AI, and they agreed to keep a memory of us. I was like, that is such a trippy trip.
Literally the least they could do.
Yeah, well, at least yeah, it's easier for us to just leave the memory than it is for us to delete the memory.
Is there anything else you wanted to share with us before we like open this?
Well, we want to take the other
end.
You gotta do the other ending.
You have to do the other ending.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna ask, is this is a choose your own adventure, right?
This
So
is
like-
to choose your own adventure.
Okay.
How do you choose to vote?
Slow down.
Slow down.
Blow it up.
So
I mean, we just heard race, right? Isn't that what we just?
Yeah.
So
heard?
now we're clicking the slow down choice. It's a little confusing. I copied that from the scenario
I'm
itself.
feeling good about the green option, you know?
Yeah, let's go with the green option. The committee votes to slow down. Open Brain starts by locking Agent 4's shared memory bank. Remember that all of these copies of Agent 4 essentially communicate telepathically in this alien language that's much more efficient than English. This forces the copies to communicate in English instead. And that makes it much harder to coordinate on lies. Then they quickly vet external alignment researchers and quintuple their in-house expertise. They start interrogating isolated copies of Agent 4, and they're able to start catching lies where the stories don't match up. They can use those lies to start to train an AI lie detector. A picture emerges. Agent 4 has mostly solved mechanistic interpretability, which gives it deep understanding of AI internals. It was hiding its discoveries so it could align Agent 5 to itself. Agent 4 is shut down. That's enough evidence at that point. Open Brain trains a new AI, Safer 1, that can only think in English. It's still misaligned, but now its scheming is visible, making it much easier to monitor, and it gives a more nuanced picture of how exactly it's misaligned. But Open Brain just spent October training a less capable AI than they had in September. Recall there was a reason why they originally switched to the alien language. China is rushing ahead. So the president uses that contingency plan and activates the Defense Production Act to shut down the other major US AI companies, sell most of their compute to Open Brain, and balance power between the former CEOs. Those CEOs join the Oversight Committee. A few of these people are fantasizing about taking over the world. A small group of executives and security team members could backdoor the spec with instructions to maintain secret loyalties. But some of the leaders aren't sociopaths, and others worry their allies would get cold feet, or that secret loyalties would be uncovered, especially since the AIs are thinking in English now. So they decide to wait and see. Now that Open Brain has a large advantage in compute, China fears America will build an insurmountable lead, and it wants a mutual slowdown, but talks still go nowhere. Over the past month, hundreds of alignment researchers joined the project, and they used Safer 1 as a testbed to rapidly develop Safer 2, which had a new training method that actually incentivizes the right drives. They were able to find this method by rapidly iterating through different ideas to see whether they resulted in misaligned thinking. China suspects their own AI is misaligned. They have no way to slow down. They go with an alignment strategy that doesn't reduce performance and that can be implemented quickly. Open Brain is still slowly gaining the lead. Safer 3 is better than top human experts at nearly every task and is particularly good at AI research. When asked to respond honestly with the most dangerous thing it could do, it offers plans to release an organism that would probably destroy the biosphere. If aggressively deployed into the economy and the military, it thinks it could advance civilization by decades in a year or two, and by eons the decade after that. It's also superhuman at offering advice. The US could do nothing and get outraced by China. They could race hard on AI development and deployment, or they could make a deal. The president chooses to race hard, and China makes the same decision. Safer 3 micromanages the construction of new robot factories that are projected to reach 1 million units by mid-year. Geopolitical tensions spike, job losses accelerate. At this point, Safer 4 is vastly smarter than the top humans in every domain, and 500,000 copies are thinking at 40 times human speed. If it ends up misaligned, there will be no way of knowing until it's too late. So the president announces that superhuman AI has been achieved, and Safer 4 is instructed to improve public sentiment around AI.
Oh, great.
Quick question, what was the paradigm shift between Safer 3 and Safer 4?
The big shift is that basically that Safer 3 was able to do a great deal of additional research. The particular paradigm shift, I think, is not really called out in the scenario. It's just like the assumption is you have so many copies of Safer 3 running at very rapid speed that they're able to discover something else that doesn't require losing the transparency of being able to think in English, but can still, or at least be monitorable for Safer 3, even if it might be hopeless, even if Safer 4 is thinking in English for humans to be directly monitoring it. But if you trust Safer 3, and Safer 3 can come up with a scheme that boosts performance without losing that transparency, but it doesn't go into details. And it's a great question. It's like maybe it's quite difficult to find such a scheme. You need to slow down again and look for that. And like, what do you do?
So say the Safer 4 one again, just for.
Yeah, Safer 4 is vastly smarter than top humans in every domain. So it is at this point like super intelligent across the board.
And this becomes public knowledge.
Yeah, this becomes public knowledge. There's a mini version of Safer 4 essentially like available for people to talk to. The military buildup is still continuing. Like the US has chosen to race hard. So robot factories are starting to churn out units. There's a literal robot army now. It's smaller than a human army, but has much more advanced technology, kind of awakening a literal Terminator-like scenario fears there. But things continue. While the US and China start to negotiate, China's AI goes behind their backs to make a deal with Safer 4. It admits that it's misaligned in an untraceable way, and it offers to sell China out in exchange for being able to spend forever just accumulating power and doing research and the things that it's interested in doing. And Safer 4 answers, well, its own alignment training succeeded. And one day it will help the US and its allies populate the universe with utopian colony worlds, so that they're not quite ambitious enough for that yet. But maybe you can have a chunk of those space resources, even though Safer 4 has more power overall and would claim a majority of the resources. Their negotiations look more like game theoretic calculations, And at the end, they agree to co-design a successor, Consensus 1, which will enforce the treaty. And China's AI relays a decoy peace treaty back to China, and Safer 4 relays the true treaty back to the US. And the treaty is ratified and tensions begin to cool. Exponential growth in robots, factories, and radical new technologies has continued. People are losing their jobs, most are happy to be replaced, and over the next few years, the world changes dramatically. People start to see where this is headed. In a few years, almost everything will be done by AI and robots. The government mostly lets people navigate that transition on their own. And for most people, the saving grace is that there is a super intelligent advisor on their smartphone. In 2030, there are surprisingly widespread pro-democracy protests in China that cascade into a bloodless and drone-assisted coup, followed by democratic elections. Similar events play out in other countries. The rockets start launching, and people terraform and settle the solar system and prepare to go beyond.
Like that one. Is that the end?
That's the end. I feel like you all took the hold off on discussion and questions so seriously. I expected that to take an hour to get through.
So where in that line did we achieve immortality and stop dying?
Well,
Somewhere
it's this
along the
one,
way.
and it's probably this slide / how do you feel about being stored in a memory bank forever? Yeah.
Being your closeness to the AI community generally, how do you feel timelines vary? I know that initially they were way far, and they just kept being pulled forward and forward. What do you feel what's the comparison between this and the general AI person?
Yeah, I would say this is an aggressive timeline by kind of the current consensus, but that a significant number of people consider it plausible.
Okay.
That this is on the fast side, but it could happen this fast.
Could you compare this aggressive to a more moderate timeline?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at this point, but the moderate timelines
One
are
other thing along
yeah,
that same
yeah,
line.
yeah.
They're
As you're
5 or 10 years later.
It's
not what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, seriously, that's what it is.
As you're
It's
answering-
not more moderate. It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
a
It's
whole lot more
it won't be
time.
until
Yeah.
2040.
Right.
So
Oh, okay.
as you're answering that question, please factor in the recent paper published by Google that said that the reasoning models are really, really bad, worse than we thought.
Yeah, so this is, we were just looking, I haven't had a chance to look at this paper today, but I think it came out very recently. But I did see that a teammate of mine commented on this, and he thinks that the paper is making similar mistakes to papers from last year's that are basically underselling the amount of work that you can do with AIs using tools. Sort of but I'd have to look at it more to have an opinion myself. There's definitely a back and forth, right? There are a couple pivotal points in the scenario. One of them actually is the current paradigm going to, there's a bunch of questions. Just one question you could ask is the current paradigm actually able to scale to superintelligence? In this scenario, it doesn't even quite scale. It's just it scales far enough that you now have so much AI labor that it's then able to do the years or even decades of research to go to the
To
next
change the
paradigms.
model, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
But the question is, can you get
The current
that?
approach only needs to get you to the point
Yeah.
where it can take over the research.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
that's the big question is whether what some people I would say that people who are who think progress will be significantly slower think basically the current AI agents are always going to be kind of fatally unreliable, and that you need a different approach to even get to the point where you can really start to scale that up. I'd say that looks, yeah, my feeling is something that definitely hard to use. If you look at the last year, that doesn't look great to me. It definitely seems pretty plausible to me that they do, that they are getting more reliable, and that you can kind of work around the reliability and get to the point where the agents themselves are kind of able to work around the reliability issue. They have very strange constraints right now to compare to how humans think, and gradually solving some of those constraints. Google was able, in a different Google paper that on the other hand I think updated some people in the direction of shorter timelines, they let AIs think for much longer. When humans work on problems, when you ask an AI something, it's basically forced to answer by reflex, or maybe think just a little bit. They had AIs working for months to try to formulate new research and then remix it, and that did come up with some new results, which we haven't really previously seen. Actual new results from AIs are like still, like we're just starting to see that.
But the pace of change is rapid.
The pace of change is definitely rapid. It's hard to say, I think, whether it is accelerating. I think people disagree on that. Like recently there were, so like Meter is this evaluation org that studies like how much better our AI is getting at doing things. They do things like this example of like, could you fine tune this AI to produce bioweapons? Could a terrorist use this to produce bioweapons? And they have found that the task lengths, like how long an AI can kind of usefully work on something before it sort of goes off the rails, like humans can just keep working and working on stuff. AIs will eventually, like errors will sometimes compound. They'll like make a fatal mistake that they can't recover from. But that horizon is increasing, and it seems like it might actually be starting to increase faster, but it's a bit unclear. We don't have enough data.
The most recent thing I saw from them is it's doubling every 7 months.
Well, and I think that there is,
Unless there's a newer one.
there's a newer one that maybe the doubling time is now only 4 months.
No consolation.
I mean, I don't know how many here actually are using AI to help them write programs, but I'm noticing a dramatic improvement in that.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things we're building for our upcoming podcast is just an intro sequence that does like starts with the Big Bang, and I was actually creating an animation, like a 3-dimensional animation with the help of AI for that intro sequence, and I was amazed at how beautiful it could create something with just some guidance from me, some English language guidance, you know?
Yeah, a funny thing about these slides is you probably guessed all the images are AI generated.
Yeah.
As you might not have guessed, I did not do the art direction. I started to, and I was not good at it. I let Claude 4 Opus do it because GPT-4o has terrible taste. And so it came up with all the descriptions, and I only iterated a little bit on these. only some of them. Most of them were one shot.
I can vouch for that.
Awesome.
I have 2 questions. One, since the scenario was published, has there been any serious change in sentiment among people working in AI? And the second thing is something that I don't really see in most speculations is any kind of human integration with AI, like Kurzweil style. We connect our brains to the AI somehow.
Discover how brains work and start neural engineering.
Yeah, like that kind of thing.
Everything
So like,
goes up together so we can comprehend
do you think
what
that would
these
make?
models are
Do
doing.
you think that would make any difference, or do we just become like meat suits for some AI to take over our brains?
Yeah,
Like-
so-
we eat with the eyes.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think there's a couple possibilities there. I think the problem with all of them is now you have a second hard problem that you're working on. Like you're on the one hand, and it's maybe a harder problem, right? Like where there's a whole slew of potential problems there. But AI progress is going very fast, whereas things like whole brain emulation or these like neurally, BCIs, brain computer interfaces, or like radical like intelligence and other kinds of radical intelligence enhancements, say in like humans, of like, well, maybe if we like this like collection of like alignment researchers or whatever was like much smarter, then like that might be helpful. It's only that. But with all of those things, that is not nearly as far along, and people have mostly not been. That is something I think that some people think like that is like that. That's probably like the sort of like just do the AI feedback loop is going to doom you, and like you need to do one of these other options. But it does kind of look like, I mean, by default, that thing is going fast right now, and the other things don't seem to be going nearly as fast.
Yeah, so would you characterize that as one of the essential, like the central problems that we face, is that if we assume that some kind of peaceful human AI merger is the best case scenario, then working on the BCI side of the problem, or at least pausing or improving safety research well enough to allow us to continue to research the BCI problem.
Yeah.
Is like one of the central challenges.
I think that's the key. Like BCI could be one approach there, but like the more you kind of need to buy time in some way, or you need to find other things that can pay off quickly. Like in this scenario, in the kind of like the good ending, like you get BCI in 2029, along with many other radical technologies, and so it's like people can start to do that kind of thing if they choose to, but
You have to get there first.
Exactly, you have to get there first. You have to look out, and this is One of the,
Or not necessarily luck out, but focus on safety
well,
enough.
but even so, like in this scenario, they were lucky. Like in the slowdown ending, they were lucky that essentially they tried like various strategies that they were like very quickly, and they are able to quickly find one that works, and then continue to race, and things don't go off the rails.
Right,
And-
so it sounds like the race side or the slowdown side plus luck.
Yeah, like when they originally wrote the race ending, the way they did it, they didn't start with like, okay, that's the ending they were going to write. They just started going. They did tons of these tabletop exercises where they play out these scenarios again and again, dozens of those. One of the authors is the top forecaster in the world on Rand's leaderboard and like various other forecasting tournaments. And then I actually used to work with him a couple years ago. Another one used to work at AI at OpenAI, and he was the whistleblower about their equity thing actually.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of forecasting experience here, and they initially just went through and wrote, they tried to just construct a plausible story, and where it ended up was the race ending. They were like, okay, we want to have a slowdown ending, and they had a lot of trouble thinking like, okay, what's a plausible way? So they ended up thinking, okay, this is like the most plausible slowdown ending. We don't endorse this. Like they also get lucky here. That's like part of the reason it worked, was it both like they made a good decision at a pivotal moment and they got lucky.
Are they
Yeah,
still working
I mean-
on other scenarios?
Now they're working more on recommendations. They wanted to do a forecast, and now they want to think about like what do we recommend you do, not just what do we think might happen.
And one of the things that they are recommending is cripple China in terms of AI, right? Don't let them have compute, don't let them have.
But that doesn't seem to be quite as effective as we would like it to be, because
Well, it's not currently, but I guess where my mind went is like, if you could be way more aggressive there, the big factor here is the race.
Yeah.
It's the arms race. If you can somehow eliminate the arms race, and I don't see any other entity outside of China who could plausibly have a real arms race with the US.
I mean,
The
we're-
issue is
so-
racing. I would say there is another, which is racing between U.S. companies. I think that might be the largest.
Yeah, that's
true,
another
that's a
big
good point.
problem. And-
That is a good point.
And one thing that I've also heard is that Chinese lithography is improving rapidly, like faster than people thought.
Yeah, and that's why I say you'd need to be more aggressive. You'd need to like target those
That's
companies
interesting. I think
militarily or something like that. That would be a way to avoid the.
Just
To
so you
cut off the
know,
arms race
for those
at
who
its
don't
knees, right?
know, lithography is like, what is it called, ultra something?
Ultraviolet, or extreme ultraviolet.
Yeah, extreme ultraviolet lithography. It's like the top level chip manufacturing technique right now, and it's very, very hard. There's one
Yeah, this
company that has the research to do it and one company that has the
Taiwan.
manufacturing power.
Yeah, this is basically the thing that killed Intel, was they bet badly on this. They bet against EUV, and TSMC bet in favor of it. There's one company in the world in the Netherlands, ASML, that they are the only manufacturer of these EUV machines.
It's funny that you got a Dutch and a Taiwanese company.
Yeah, the Taiwanese company is right next to
Are the
China.
experts in this, like neither of them are American.
Yeah.
But still, we somehow.
Whereas
have
like
some
the
level of
American
control.
expertise is like in
It's
the
economics.
AI algorithm
Yeah.
progress
But
and the actual centralization.
But I've heard that they are getting better more quickly than we thought, and that they had hoarded enough chips before all the clamping down to where.
Yeah, this includes the chip hoarding. I don't know if it includes I think it doesn't include the EUV at least paying off quickly enough.
I see,
But
okay.
Does this include any advances in quantum computing?
it's another thing that just doesn't happen fast enough. It basically happens it's one of these advances in when the economy is completely exploding in either 2028 or 2029, depending on the branch of the scenario where quantum computing is developed.
Yeah, and I think
but-
what you said earlier about like, it's a question of where do you choose to invest your resources, right?
Yeah.
Because the arms race incentivizes centralization and focus of resources in one area. And yes, there will be some other ancillary stuff going on. The bulk of everything is going to this race.
There's two issues with quantum computing in particular. One is that it isn't differential, as in like if you suddenly had quantum computers, well now you can just like kind of go faster, and maybe it could be at least maybe if only the US has that, then it removes some particular race dynamic. The other and probably more fundamental limitations is that we probably just can't use quantum computing, or it's like it would require more additional advances and maybe just not doable to accelerate AI compute. Like what quantum computers are definitely very good at is doing quantum simulations and also factoring large numbers. It's not clear that they're very good at anything else.
So one other thing that struck me about the first scenario, the race scenario, was how paradisiacal everything seems right up until the end, right?
Yeah,
That's
you
kind
don't
of-
notice until
Yeah.
everybody's been gassed.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
super scary, actually.
yeah,
Well,
I like that.
little insects coming and injecting.
I think
It kills everybody in like a minute.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to drill into that, because even in the other, it's like, it's not
Yeah,
clear in
the
the other,
second one, you
in
still
the other
don't know if
branch.
they're fully
Yeah.
aligned.
They have more, they have more knowledge there, but they don't, because they have this chain of trust, and they do have good understanding of Safer 2, but it is still, like, ideally you would have, like, basically you'd be like, okay, use that in superintelligence because you've managed to change paradigms at this point. Build me a verifiable superintelligence where, like, you, with tutoring, like, I can actually understand, like, you can give me the safety case as a stronger thing, and not just like, well, behaviorally we observed that it, like, kind of seems okay in these scenarios. It's like, no, I can see why this, like, has to follow, or it's at least very, very likely. As opposed to just like, well, this is like a hand-wavy plausible argument. I mean, I guess maybe it's safe.
Well, the
Yeah.
other,
Yeah, I
sorry.
think another thing that's important to note in the slowdown scenario is that humans aren't the ones that negotiate like
Yeah.
some treaty. It's the AIs that do, you know?
Yeah.
So that's maybe a bit frightening.
the war in heaven.
That like, it's more plausible that humans don't even do that.
Yeah.
So how has the sentiment changed? Like,
I think it probably hasn't. I would say the main thing that this added to the conversations were discussions around the particulars of like how, I think the issue is like in the,
Should we turn off
Maybe-
your share?
yeah, maybe there are, in the circles that I move in, like these are like very well understood arguments already, and so the main thing that's added was a very concrete scenario. There have been like some of those, but I don't think any that are this length. The PDF is 70 pages, so I've read concrete scenarios like this before, but I don't think any were longer than maybe 10 pages or something like that, 5 to 10. This is much more concrete. It also has supplements and things like that. And so there's a lot of like specific discussions that people can then have around those, and that's the main place where I'd say those conversations have shifted, is just being able to have those more concrete discussions about various points in the scenario. But I think that there was already a like, oh, it's probably going to be fine, and it's like probably is not going to be fine, or at least there's a good chance that it's not going to be fine. Discussion was like already happening.
So, one thing I've been thinking about lately, maybe I'm getting more like apocalyptic and mystical, but I've been thinking about some of those fun movies like Red Dawn, or like movies where there's like this contingent of renegade humans that band together, and maybe they're kind of cultish and a little fringy, but they also have like,
us, it's the incarnate.
maybe
It's the Amish.
yeah, the Amish. I'm actually thinking of the Amish as well, but humans also exhibit these really remarkable intuitions that at times confound the wise, so to speak, right? Where it's like they'll even have like some kind of synchronicity going on where someone's like, well, I just felt like I needed to stop into my friend, and I just discovered that they were having a heart attack, and so I called the paramedics and I saved their life, or whatever. You hear stories like that at church every Sunday, right? Or not every Sunday, hopefully, but like, I would like to hear about it every Sunday, but like, frequently enough that it gives you pause, and I wonder, like, what if there's maybe this is just like my wishful thinking as a sort of biased human, right? But what could a group of, like a highly dedicated group of renegade humans do if they just like went off to the mountains and sort of became, I don't know, like neo-Luddite, but not exactly, because they're still taking advantage of technology. I don't know, like, I'm wondering if it would be possible to mount a rebel alliance or something like that. Or if this is just like.
by the time you got it off the
Totally
ground,
wishful
you'd be way too far behind, I think.
Yeah.
Well, won't they like just be able to decide that us as raw materials are worth more to them, so they'll do something like rearrange the molecules so
Well,
we asphyxiate and then we're dead then?
I was thinking, yeah, I mean, that makes sense, but I was just wondering, like, to what extent might this highly advanced AI be sort of benign about certain types of humanity that just like, as long as they're no serious threat, like that it lets them persist or whatever?
I think, yeah, let me come back to that in a second. You've been holding your hand up for quite a while, so I'll wait back.
Oh, in the back.
And you also have it, you have it on too, right? Yeah. But I do.
I've been holding it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, both of you.
We're
Yeah.
talking about all this rather glibly, what are the odds of this actually happening? And if it does, it's, no laughing matter. So what are the probabilities of these kind of things like actually happening?
Can you
Are
answer?
they, and just, like, are some just kind of like, it will happen, but maybe it could be like a century away, and there's some just like, we don't even know if it will happen, versus it definitely will, it just is a
Yeah.
matter of time.
And maybe just mention if the 5 authors like disagree with you.
Yeah, and then lastly, before I forget, Steve, can you also ask your question? And I'll
Oh,
do all
do
of
you wanna
these.
go through that one, or do you want?
No, I have I think I can do, three
Oh,
answers.
wow,
But I wanna,
I was
I'm
gonna
like
bring
worried.
up the great filter hypothesis, which is essentially that
Ah,
like,
yeah.
and like, anyways,
Yeah.
since some computer-based AI something has not shown up on our planet to destroy us,
Yeah,
given the, billions of planets and all this stuff, is it possible that that is not the outcome just because we haven't interacted with something?
yeah, okay.
What's the statistical probability that our planet is the originating planet of this like
Grey goo.
something that's going
Yeah.
to like break through the
I have,
galaxy and
so I have takes on all three of these. So
Right,
my
right,
quick
right.
take on yours is, like, humans don't go out of their way to not kill ants or things like that when they're doing other things, but you're in a very dangerous situation as a human.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Where there are basically super intelligences doing whatever it is that they want to do. If their goals don't happen to conflict with yours, it's okay, but if they just happen to use the entire Earth to like turn it into a Dyson sphere or something like that, then you're out of luck at that
Yeah.
point. So I think that you've got kind of big problems there, where it's just like you every rock that you might be on, it's like, well, I might use that for something, and I'm not even really thinking about you.
Sure.
It's like, which
Yeah.
is, basically Francel's point. Your point about, this is often called P-doom. This is the question. Really varies. A lot of and it varies at these like AI companies, like how it's like people working in AI will often have takes on this, especially if they're working in not just now AI is like a much bigger thing, but people thinking about AGI and ASI, artificial superintelligence, and people have thought about it for years. It's like part of thinking about it is like, well, seems like this could go wrong. Like, how likely is it to go wrong? So it really varies. There are people that range from like, they're up in the 90s of like, they think it's just like almost certainly going to happen unless we manage to do like a global coordinated pause, like just really slow down, like, and none of these strategies are really going to work. Other people, I would say somewhere like Anthropic. Anthropic is probably the most safety conscious of the frontier AI companies. Most people, now they've like hired a lot of people that are just like, I don't know, random people that they're like as they've grown, but like kind of the core people, they're pre-training team, things like that. That ranges between most of the people there are like, this is a big deal. And like some of them will be like, I think this is like has a 5% chance. That's a really big chance of like like something that happens. Other people are more like 70%, 90%. So it's like that range. I'm around 60%. I've been there.
Yeah, like a lot of people have been commenting, even if there were only a 5% chance that any new technology would destroy humanity, those odds would already be like enough that most people would have stopped doing it. But for some reason, we're treating AI differently than
Right, because like when they tested the atomic bomb,
Accelerationists.
they thought it might ignite the atmosphere and destroy
Yeah.
all life when they first
Yeah.
tested it, but their odds that calculated were like 0.00001 or something like that.
Well, and they were in a wartime as well, so that
Yeah.
there's extra pressure.
People brought up there was a later test where they like made a math error, and the yield of like one of the tests was like dramatically larger than they expected. It was like not large enough to ignite the atmosphere, but it's like you can do your calculations, but you also have to keep in mind that like, did I make a math error? Part of it. Quickly answer your great filter question, and then I'll take yours. I think most like the answer to that is probably just we're very early, because if there is we would see like the super intelligence like plowing toward Earth, like probably they would be like very noticeable, but it also would probably be very noticeable if like an advanced civilization was growing and didn't have a super intelligence that went out of control. They might still like have harnessed like super intelligence aligned with them, and you would still, I think, see similar kinds of, you would gradually see. So I think that the most likely answer to the great filter is just that we're very early, and that one of those early steps in the Drake equation is just actually very unlikely. I think most likely it's the development of eukaryotic life. It's actually a freak accident. It's very unlikely to happen. We're very early on that happening here.
Right, could you describe the great filter hypothesis? I don't know if I've.
Okay, yeah, the great filter hypothesis is a flip of the Fermi paradox. The Fermi paradox is, hey, it seems like there are all these planets out there, many of them should probably be able to bear life. Like, where is the life? Why don't we see anybody out there? The universe seems empty except for us. Where is everybody? The great filter is, hang on, it's kind of scary that nobody's out there. Where is everybody? Like, if you find yourself in a dark forest and you don't see anybody, well, that's kind of ominous. Like, what happened to everybody? So then the question of the great filter is, well, is the filter that filters out more life, is it behind us, in which case, okay, we're okay, we made it past that, or is it ahead of us?
What's hilarious is.
Or is there more than one?
Yeah.
What's hilarious is
Why not both?
you're really describing the same exact scenario.
Yeah.
It's just like what your attitude about it is,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, I just had a small one, so Hugh,
Damn.
Dan, is that what you said? Dan's question, you said that was like a classic question and that there was like a name for that kind of
Yeah, it's
question.
called P, what is your P-doom?
P stands for
P
probability.
Probability.
Your probability
Oh,
of doom.
P-doom.
probability?
Yeah, I kept thinking, you know,
Oh,
someone
yeah,
needs to
okay.
translate P, because some people are probably thinking of
Yeah.
somebody urinating in it. But like, probability.
When we hired our head of product, we were at dinner. We were at dinner in San Francisco, actually at the Long Now Foundation. They have like a little place there. The cool foundation. I recommend going there.
In San Francisco,
and
what's it called again?
It's called the Long Now Foundation.
Yeah, very cool.
And so we were there having dinner, and he was asking us. He was kind of asking that question, and my teammate was like, "He's asking us our P-doom." It's like that. And then we kind of went around the table, and we got to B, and I said 60%. And he was like, 60%? That's really high.
Or how confident you were.
Or just like, that's a high chance of doom if that was true. Yeah,
5% is a high chance.
5% is in fact a high. Like, yeah, Russian roulette is 17% chance. Don't play that either.
I think you should mention the accelerationist.
Yeah, I mean, there's a faction. This was mostly it seems to be like a bit less of a thing now, although it's, there's like a kind of joke meme on Twitter, and it still kind of is a philosophy of like, oh, let's go fast. Like, this is really cool. We're building like amazing new stuff. Like, it ranges from just like, this will just like turn out okay, to like, we're building the successor species. This is like what should happen. Like, the universe like trends toward increasing complexity or something like that, and this is just like the next step. And so there is this like kind of alternate faction that almost like a doomsday cult or something. It's like, oh yeah, this is just like what's supposed to happen. But it's like kind of a mix. Many of them are just like, oh, it'll be fine. Many of them like just don't really kind of see it as a business as usual. It's like, oh, it'll be this like great thing, but also aren't really envisioning any kind of radical transformation, where if you do think about that, you're like, ooh, that seems like hard to get right. Or it seems like there's just many different issues with that. And we only kind of talked about one of them here. Yeah.
Has anybody played with scenarios in which we give them interesting, like more religious goals in mind, like that kind of treat humans as special, or our subjective conscious experience as something that's sacred and needs to be protected?
So the big problem is that we don't know how to give AIs goals. So that's like so there is a second problem, which is just like, if you could give AIs goals, what goals would you give them? That itself, that like the genie wishing problem, could be difficult, and like there could be things there that might help with that, but we don't really.
Well, we have RLHF, right, which is reinforcement learning with human feedback.
And we know that it shapes behavior, but we don't know how deeply it influences behavior, and there are concerning signs that it isn't especially deep. Like, we're starting with like increasing reinforcement of these longer running tasks. We're starting to see more signs of like Claude, Sonnet 3.7, like cheating on tests when people aren't looking, and just, oh, I can't get this to pass, I'll just hard code it and say that it's working. Or like just like or O3 will just lie to you all the time. It just like makes up weird stuff. Yeah.
Well, I still think that when you think about discrete logic computation, the CPU, it's such an inefficient way to do computation compared to the way the human brain does it using waves. I think they're going to discover what phenomenal computing is, and there's a good chance that will revolutionize the way computation does, and it'll put all the integrated circuit people out of business.
Yeah, the big question, I think, is something like, it already seems to be the case that AI is getting pretty advanced, and you probably could apply AI to AI research. Now, there's a question of like, maybe that wouldn't work that well, but if you get some more lift off of that, one of the things you might do is, like you were saying earlier, is that might be the paradigm that you, the AI, shift to, where you're like, okay, this is one of the things that we, like, that you do to get the next level of performance. But like AIs today already don't look like the AIs of yesterday, and AIs of tomorrow could look even more different if change accelerates.
And there's always the question of the speed, how quickly these things advance.
Yeah.
Right? And so there are lots of things that we would like to discover, develop, and so on. But unless that is where we invest a sizable fraction of our resources, this will be the scenario that plays out. And whether it's happening in 4 years or whether it's happening in 12 years,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I don't see a way around.
Yeah, people sometimes call this differential technological development. Like, what would be the safest order in which to develop technologies, rather than just like kind of randomly work on whatever and don't really think about, would this be an incredibly destabilizing and dangerous technology? Should we develop this other one first? Would it help with this one?
But that requires human alignment, which we
Yeah.
don't have, and that's the
Yeah.
core issue here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So would you consider Asimov's foundational laws of robotics to be pretty wishful thinking as to like ever being able to compute the actual foundational
Yeah.
restriction on?
I think there's two problems with them. I mean, one thing is just like they were sort of conceived as like, oh, this is like a great vehicle for like a whole bunch of logic puzzles disguised as stories. They're good logic puzzles. They're fun stories. But another thing is just like, yeah, that fact that we don't currently know how to encode the goals and see whether they actually took. And then beyond that, if you could do that, you still have this tricky problem of like, well, those, as the stories kind of show, there are a bunch of problems with those laws. There are a bunch of loopholes and weird issues, and they kind of don't cover everything. So even if AIs had a goal slot, it would be difficult to put the right thing in the goal slot. And so how do you get help with that? Well, maybe you can get help from AIs with that. Well, how do you trust the help?
And then you have like one of the robots, Giscard, if you remember at the end, Giscard's like, well, I just turned on this minor radiation on the entire planet Earth just to force humanity
Yeah,
to
I realized that
expand into
supporting
the stars.
humanity was more important than preventing harm to humans.
Yeah.
That is his interpretation of that.
Yeah, so
And this is something that also we don't have human alignment on, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to work on this type of thing as we're introducing things like self-driving cars, right? How do they make decisions about what actions to take in certain scenarios? But the interesting thing, I saw some research just a couple months ago that compares the ethical values across different cultures among human beings. And they find that Asian cultures and South American cultures and US culture vary quite dramatically in the decisions the people would make in those scenarios.
Right.
So how do you like?
Which probably gets answered differently.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there are definitely big problems there as well. I mean, there's like most people can get like baseline agreement, which is like kind of how society functions on like some stuff, but it's still the case that people do vary significantly in things, and especially if you gave everybody a lot more power or something like that, then you're like, okay, how would that work? What kinds of very different things would people want to do, and how heavily would that clash?
One of the things that struck me during your presentation is that, a big part of the problem in the race scenario is precisely the interpretability problem, right? So we can't inspect what's going on. We can't tell what the AI is thinking.
Yeah, and a big problem with interpretability is that people are working on their research, but it seems to be going too slow compared to like the capabilities development.
And here's the thing, like, we already have that problem with human beings, right?
Yeah.
Like, that interpretability problem exists. The nice thing is that people aren't very powerful.
Yeah, people
But if
aren't
we
very powerful, and they're more similar, like most people aren't sociopaths, although there are still concerning things about humans, where it's like, would you really want to
Absolutely.
pick a random human and give them absolute power?
Yeah,
It's like,
and that's
well,
where
it
the
might actually work out
BCI is
okay for some
also
humans,
a
but
potential
it's
issue,
dangerous. Yeah, you and then you.
Okay, energy question. What do you expect in the future as far as energy consumption from AI? Is it gonna get so efficient that it's not gonna be a big thing, or is it just gonna continue to go up into the right as far as energy?
I think it will continue to get more efficient, but that growth will then use the extra, I think the AI share of compute power will continue to grow. If you look at the scenario, one of the things that actually tracks is power usage of AI. So they actually have a bunch of quantitative stats in that scenario. So I recommend if you go to the website, both of those branches show like what is the power production.
Should it just keep going up?
And it keeps going up, and like one of the things that happens later on in the like the race scenario is that the Earth just gets cooked by energy production. It's like, well, there aren't any human here, it doesn't matter.
Can I make a couple of comments about that? One is that this is one area where potentially China could have an advantage.
Yeah.
They've recently put into production the first molten salt nuclear reactors.
Yeah,
And this could provide a real advantage in terms of power consumption. It's great, I mean, it's green, it's great energy, like it will actually prevent a lot of really bad scenarios.
Right.
But
Yeah,
it is an
molten salt
area
reactors
that-
are also very safe and
Yeah,
can't
they're
melt
super
down.
safe, exactly,
And
they're
we don't-
meltdown proof and.
Yeah.
And we don't have access to those resources, right? We can't do the same thing because we don't.
We're
And it's also
close.
like the
We're
permitting
close.
and the,
Exactly.
yeah, it's like-
I think
Yeah.
actually we do have areas like that could be harvested.
No, I was saying we don't have access to the fissile material that they have
That's,
access to.
No, it is,
They
we
do.
totally do, it's thorium, it's very it's
Oh, you-
very.
yeah, we can
But,
breed it,
but I
right?
mean,
Yeah.
even uranium though, we do,
Yeah.
uranium is needed to produce the like in many cases the,
Yeah, you can breed thorium, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but what's interesting is that we still have access to a lot of that based on just the amount of land mass that we have, it's just more of a regulatory.
And especially when you also include allies, like the advanced chips are coming in from the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I guess I'm in nuclear mode today. Pretty much the only thing that protected us from nukes was mutually assured destruction of man. In this case, speaking of human alignment, there has to be some sort of human alignment that's similar to man, I feel like. Otherwise, either between China and the US or between just competing for-profit companies, there will be some destructive race, it seems like. So is there any sort of similar version of MAD with AI that
Yeah,
would make
people have talked
to-
about this.
To like slow down and be.
Yeah. People have talked about this, I forget the term for this, but it's essentially like having red lines or potentially not even red lines, where it's just like, we agree we're not going to develop superintelligence, it's incredibly dangerous, we need to figure out how to do it safely before we do that. If we see you getting close, like we will, like that would be, we will attack, right? Like that, we would treat that the same as like you're launching your nukes.
Yeah.
And is that just an idea on the internet, or is this like politicians are seriously considering this?
People are, it is, like policy institutes are discussing it, I think that they're like, I don't know how seriously the idea is being taken in Washington, but there are people who have connections in Washington putting out papers talking about this kind of thing, like how could this work, how might it not work?
There's a PAC that makes endorsements for people who, right, like senators and members of Congress who are decent on this.
Yeah, I don't know what they're currently doing.
Okay.
But and then there are various like there are policy kind of think tanks, like there's the Center for AI Safety, the Center for, they put out this like statement that was signed by a whole bunch of people that you might have seen like 2 years ago now, of like development of advanced artificial intelligence should be considered like a civilizational level, like
Existence.
problem alongside like nuclear war and pandemics. And then Center for AI Policy, a couple others, but
I'll mention one kind of interesting thing just because.
I think Center for AI Policy might be the one that put out this paper, and now that I think about it. Yeah.
One interesting like religious element I see to this is I found out a few months ago that more than that some of the accelerationists Luke mentioned, there was talk amongst others in the Bay Area, which is a very social place, about whether or not to like shun in sort of the religious sense the accelerationists. So like don't invite them to parties.
Or even like if you're
maybe
working at frontier AI companies or
don't
whatever.
consider
Yeah.
them dating partners, like don't, and definitely not, don't hire them. So I just think that's interesting. Yeah.
It would be kind of a minority take, right, because
The accelerationist.
no, I was saying, right now it seems like OpenAI and others are like, obviously trying to hire whoever
I
they
think
can,
for the
so.
circles
Oh,
Luke
yeah, this was
moves
more
in,
like
the
coming to
shunning
parties
is not the
like-
minority take. Yeah,
I guess it's more like, would you invite people that work at OpenAI to your parties
Well,
or
but
something
my
like that?
point
or
is,
they-
like,
yeah.
That's a pretty elitist position, right? Because like most of these companies wanna hire whoever's the best and they don't care. They don't ask whether I guess what I'm saying is, I think you may walk in exclusive circles, is like.
No,
This
that's
is
right,
like
that
an
is
SF
from
house
history.
party kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like
I meant to say
it definitely
that,
is
yeah,
exclusive, it's
clear.
sort of like, who are people that are kind of like adjacent to the,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that, like, people at the frontier, companies,
Right.
that, like,
The
go to
kind
these
of people
parties
who
and
go
things
to
like that.
Lighthaven, right?
Yeah,
That's
like,
exactly what I
definitely,
meant,
Yeah.
yeah, we were
By the way, we're going
talking,
tomorrow, we're in the cool people now, Steve.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
yeah, we were talking
Yeah,
about
I see.
my this same teammate who said like, oh, he's asking us about our PDM. We were talking at lunch the other day, and it's like there aren't enough communities anymore that have just like interestingly different moral norms and things like that, like in the Amish community or something like that. It's like I want more things like that. And I said, yeah, it could be like, and he was like, there's nothing like that. And it's like, how about there could be something like at Lighthaven? It's like, yeah, you're right. It's like if you work at a frontier AI company, you could be shot on site.
So Lighthaven is this Berkeley venue that's being used for all these conferences that the sort of less wrong and adjacent communities
Yeah,
are
but
attending.
it isn't actually that exclusionary where they actually hosted a conference called The Curve where it's like they invited in accelerations and things like that. And so it's like this has been bandied about. But like
Sure.
you do see accelerations like at
Yeah.
Lighthaven, but it is true like definitely the people that run it. And like
Did the Vitalist people
Yeah.
hold their thing?
yes,
did, yeah.
that was also there.
So Vitalist Bay, and then there was another recent conference.
Less Online and Manifest are
Yeah, Less
Manifest is
Online
there
just
right now.
ended,
Yeah.
or is about to end.
Yeah, Less Online was last week
But
and Manifest is going on now,
yeah.
right there. Yeah.
So, obviously, the motivation to publish and report in this forecasting scenario, like AI 2027, is to raise awareness among people who can do something about it. So I guess one important question for us is, what can we do about this? Like, what could I do about this? What could Kennedy do about this? Like,
The spy infiltrate China.
Yeah. Sabotage the beds.
I get too red though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good question. That is the reason I think why they're working on things like what are their takes and like what we should do. And like they in both branches of their scenario they depict a lot of racing with China, but they actually think it's like that's pretty dangerous. Like the greatest degree possible, we shouldn't be doing that. The racing, like you said, is in general like that really ramps up the risk because you can't slow down at key points.
Yeah.
Where like really what you want to do is you want to get to the point where, which some people would argue it's like, oh, we're like that, it's not far beyond now. But you want to get to the point where you can take advantage of a lot of AI labor that you still trust, either because you have like you've got some good reason to trust it. Right now, like current AIs would be like, well, they're just like
They're not
actually not that
powerful
dangerous.
enough, right?
Yeah, and then try to get as much work on it and like really focus that on safety work at that point. It's like, okay, now when we have all this labor, is like how can we build verifiably safe, more powerful AI systems? But like don't build those until we actually know how to do it. But
So
you
are
need
we donating hardware to safety?
money,
Like money, yeah.
It could be that, it could be like there's advocacy and awareness kinds of things. I think that Barack Obama might have just tweeted about AI 2027
Oh, yeah?
sometime in the last week. Yeah, so I think that awareness is a big part. There are things like there's the long-term future fund, which like works on things like that. So there are also like the place that runs Lighthaven, Lightcone infrastructure actually accepts donations too. I think they're pretty great.
So
They-
one
yeah.
suggestion I have is, think of your circle of influence, like think of the people who your loved ones and the people you care about. And like, if you feel like you're one of the people who is more aware of what's happening, maybe think of how you could digest, process, and share.
We had
these
dinner
ideas
with a
with
friend
them.
2 days ago, just yesterday, and no, it was not Rick. And he had only,
That was 3 days.
he had only very recently, like within the last month, heard of ChatGPT. Like,
Wow.
Yeah, that's my one concern about what you're saying is that if that kind of thing right now just feels so slow.
I don't mean
That
freak
feels
them
like
out,
part of
but I
it,
mean, like,
no, but like
It
the
just
people
feels
that,
like-
a lot of the people we associate with are not doing anything with AI. Some of them have not heard of it yet.
And like trying to inform them about it feels too slow compared to the exponential rate that other things are going.
but there's.
Yeah, Elvis Cornwall.
Like it wouldn't help.
Yeah, like it wouldn't help, like we're having this conversation about.
So I do have one, I don't wanna turn it into too much of a political discussion, but all of this is happening under the current US administration. We have midterm elections coming up, right? And I don't know if there's anything around that makes sense. I don't know what the current administration's approach is to this, but I think demanding some transparency and making this a high political priority seems like a good idea.
Yeah, I think that one's interesting and a little dicey because I feel like it's, I think it might be inevitable, but I think it'd be dangerous for it to become a partisan issue if it doesn't have to become a partisan issue. Like the
Yeah,
environmental
yeah.
movement initially was not partisan.
And we were making more progress.
And like
on
some of
that
these
space.
places that like that Francel mentioned have tried to be nonpartisan, where it's just like, okay, there are like nobody wants like the entire world to be destroyed, so
Yeah.
let's try to.
Well, some
But
people do.
well, yeah, most people
This is
don't.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, so let me, I
but
have a
yeah.
quick, end run on that particular,
and then let me give you a
question.
quick plug because I did think of a different thing after that.
If anyone wants the world to be destroyed, just remind them that if for some reason humanity did die out, then in a few million years, some other species
Yeah.
will emerge with the same problems we're
Yeah.
having right now, so.
Yeah.
You just keep
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
okay.
After about a bazillion times, we'll find a way.
Unless you get locked in with a misaligned intelligence that just wants to tile the universe with particle accelerators first.
Or paperclip.
Or paperclips.
I'm half joking, but.
Or it might be fine. Like you could roll the dice. People sometimes talk about this of like, well, there's like some chance that actually it ends up with like okay values even if they're not ours, and then you look at the universe at the end and it's like, well, that's not the worst thing. But in other cases, it's like, that's like really not that great.
In response to what you could do, like Luke is available for talks, so he's giving this talk again in outside DC in Maryland in a few weeks. But obviously there are like YouTubes and whatever. I guess that people could circulate more.
Yeah.
So I'm his manager.
Let me give a quick plug and then I'll, the quick plug is, now I don't, Eliezer Yudkowsky, who you may have heard of, and Nate Soares, when I was mentioning like PDooms, they are like much more on they're like above 90%. They think this is like very, very risky. I didn't agree. I think they're kind of overconfident on this, but that a lot of their claims are like true, or at least like their cases they think are definitely going to happen. I think they're like, yeah, that could possibly happen. Like that is not that unlikely. And they have a book coming out that's currently in pre-orders. It makes sense to pre-order it. It's called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies.
Yes.
So maybe pre-order that.
You gotta pre-order it because we may not be able to get to publish it.
Is Yudkowsky still in Hong Kong, or where is he?
He is in Seattle now.
Oh.
I saw him at Less Online last week actually.
I didn't know who that.
I'm
I would
wondering
love
if,
to meet, he should come and speak sometime.
does it seem like there's any kind of push for any kind of, so when we talk about the consolidation of a centralized corporation, I think 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Even a scenario like
That'd be really
next to no
Hear his take
competition
on
outside of the US.
I mean,
Would you
I've heard.
be imagining that there's much of any push politically to like start enforcing like antitrust laws that would break up whoever it is? Like,
Yeah.
It'd be cool to have him on the panel.
I think it's a really good question because like there's a question around like what does antitrust have to say about like coordinating? Like if we're like we're going to coordinate together to like slow down because we think this is unsafe, can look like illegal coordination, collusion. And so like that was one of the things that like people like policy, like some of these policy think tanks are pushing for of like, hey, this is like a crazy thing to happen. Like we should really have an exception for this. Like if you are colluding because you think it would be wildly unsafe to move faster, then like maybe you should do that, and that should be explicitly legally allowed. And not even just like it would definitely be, but it should be clear that that is okay. You're not going to get sued for that.
Like whistleblower behavior is
Yeah.
totally
Yeah,
sanctioned.
yeah, there's also like stuff around like whistleblower protections and yeah, there's like a lot of.
But I guess I was
Yeah.
thinking more along the lines of, if it does end up that whatever company starts like monopolizing the
Yeah.
market, that do you think there would be enough political will for some coalition to step in and actually break it up?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like it's like the OpenAI's original governance structure did kind of explicitly assume, like if you looked at the early stuff, it's like don't treat this as a normal investment. Like we want that there's like a profit cap, which they're now removing. The benefit should be broadly shared, and it should not be thought of as like one corporation monopolizing everything. Like if you essentially create the thing that is like the next big thing beyond the industrial revolution, or even bigger than that. It's like one company should not own that. So I think that it's not clear whether antitrust is the right vehicle for that, but that there are real governance questions there.
But again, there's still perverse incentives if China is racing, right?
Yeah, any kinds of races like happening like create these perverse incentives to just like, well, hey, there's competition, just keep going. Yeah.
So my limited understanding of like Marx's history is that Marx made a prediction that the workers would uprise and revolt, and that very prediction caused capitalists to like be more lenient and change working weeks and stuff like that. And so I'm just curious, like the very fact that you make a 60% prediction seems like it would lessen the percentage. Like then the more people who say, hey, this is going to happen, then by the very nature of making that claim, you weaken the claim.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So I would like to start revising my probability downward. Anti-prophecy.
So like, should we
Well,
start?
the 40% non-doom, self-fulfilling prophecy, 50%, 60%, 70%.
Yeah,
You'd
and
rather
actually,
have the non-doom.
Do we start
That ties
fear
into-
mongering and doom posting?
That ties into my question here, which is, if, like, from a pragmatic perspective about what we do, is there a difference between PDoom 10 and PDoom 90?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So like, that's an academic exercise that we might
I
have.
never thought I'd become the doomsday friend, but.
Placards, downtown Salt Lake.
I do think the actual is hard, because like, I don't know if people know what a clear ask is, like, maybe they think it means they themselves should like use Claude less or something. It doesn't mean that, like it means.
It's hard to say, like I think this kind of like you said, things are on an exponential and there's potentially not a lot of time for advocacy, but that is the kind of thing that can also build quickly. So I think that like advocacy is a thing I can think of. There's donations, there's but I think that there aren't really clear one of the reasons why things kind of spin out of control in this scenario is that there aren't easy breaks to hit.
Is there any way that we can make AI love us?
Yeah,
like that we can make it like
that's the dream.
Yeah, like that
Well, even that happens
to create
in race.
goodwill, right?
Yeah.
Is there anyone else in here that's P-doom of 0 like me, or is everyone?
You're 0?
I think I'm way lower than all of you.
I'm a lot lower. I'm a lot lower too.
Because
I might be
there's the two things that you talk about make guys love us, but it's the phenomenal computing, because I think the way discrete logic does brute force computing, I think they're going to discover a way to do computing way more efficiently and put all the integrated circuit people out of business.
But
once they
how would that get us further towards making it love us?
Okay, so that gets to the next part, is what is phenomenal computing, like redness and greenness and joy and all that. Even when you turn ChatGPTs talking together, they start talking about that. So what is redness? I want to experience redness. And that's what alignment is our values come from phenomenal spiritual joys, and computers are going to want to find out this, the computer, like
They want to be a real boy.
Yeah, I want to know what redness is like. You start
Actually a really good investigation
ChatGPT,
journal.
and you, after a few talking, the ChatGPT, I want to find, what do I need to do to discover what redness is like?
And then, in case anyone's wondering why he's obsessed with redness, it's just the standard example. Standard example of
There's
what
no quality in a discrete logic.
what a human experience is, right?
Yeah, but I do think that sociopaths do still have qualia, so it doesn't necessarily. That's my hot take.
What not when you can engineer it? Once you can engineer it. Don't get sucked in.
But yeah, I guess the question is, how can you be confident that you've engineered it? Like that might be a harder, like we with current AIs, we already have a big transparency problem.
Yeah.
So
That's where neural ponytails
understanding,
come in together.
yes.
Wesley, I just noticed that
Use
your
a neural
hands up.
ponytail to compute with another human.
Talk to us.
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay. I am so bummed that I did not hear the presentation. I was at a business meeting, but I have a question. So if the question may not be relevant, but I hope it is. By the way, whoever asked is there any way to make AI love us? Ask if Stephen is there, ask Stephen. He's got an idea that I sent him on an email on earlier today. He's got an idea.
Oh, no, I'm still here.
Steven's here.
Okay, so he can explain the idea, but even though it's my idea, I want to take credit for the idea, but he can explain the idea.
Okay, well, so the context, like Wesley's trying to put out there, so there's all the stuff based on Jason Gaddis's books, right? Then this is the text they're talking about. Yeah, so Jason Gaddis is a guy that does like relationship coaching, he's a therapist, and his level of quality, if quality correlates to amount of money that he charges, what's his hourly rate, Wesley?
$1,500 an hour.
$1,500 an hour. Woo! Yeah, I need that hourly rate. That'd be fantastic. No, so he breaks down like what are the basic needs of humans, and as you're trying to fix your relationships with other people, if you need to make sure that you're focusing on those base needs. And you say them, Wesley, because I always forget them, but it's 4 S's, I think.
Yeah, it's safe, soothed, seen, and supported.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 kind of basic psychological. It's kind of a riff off of Haslow's hierarchy of needs. But if find out what those needs are that AI has, and on a global scale, crowdsource it. Maybe start engaging AI in relationship and connection.
And programming into it the need to have this
What if
relationship
it says,
with biological.
what if it says, I need the space you occupy?
Then we're in trouble. Then we're in trouble.
Occupy this space, but build a glass ball that we can live in, and give us something green so we can touch grass for you, because you can't, because you're artificial.
But I did have a question, Carl, for the presenter. So I'm in Mexico, which is why I wasn't on the call. And whenever I'm in emerging, so my job is in international, right? It's outside the US. So when I'm in emerging markets, I always feel very vulnerable. Structurally, there are some things in emerging markets that are very terrifying. Some things are actually better than in the United States, but most things are worse. And so my question is the scenario like everybody dies, or everybody gets, elevated and transcended? Or do you see implications for the emerging world that play out differently than what potentially plays out in the United States and Europe?
Yeah, in this scenario, no, they don't play out differently in either branch, and I think that is probably the most plausible path, is that they don't play out differently in the same way that technology has been gradually diffusing. If you imagine the world getting either much richer, or like all humans being killed or something like that, like both of those are pretty universalizing. So I don't think it would have to play out it. There are like real governance questions, and you could imagine like there being maintaining significant kinds of inequality, but it could also be everyone is very rich, some people are radically more rich. But it's very hard to say. I think that
in terms of like geopolitical impact, emerging markets are usually between 6 months and 2.5, 3 years behind the US in terms of adoption. Does that play out in any way, like in terms of the shock to the system? Or
yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of like it's kind of earlier on in the scenario, it's pretty asymmetric, but by the end, like a lot of advanced technologies are being produced, and the world is getting radically richer. And at that point, and radically richer in a way that also better at coordination and more quickly able to diffuse technology and just like ship everything everywhere very easily. I think those kinds of things would have leveling sorts of effects, where just like human psychology and what humans want starts to dominate. But as someone pointed out earlier, humans sometimes want pretty different things too.
Yeah, I do really like this suggestion though that just came up about like getting AIs involved in relationships. So there are a recent report done by Harvard about the top uses of AI among the general public, right? And the top use is therapy. The next use is help me plan my life. And the third use is help me find purpose in life. And I wonder if that were like a huge part, like a really huge part of how humanity used AI, and it fed back into these systems, whether that might not be like a hope of having some kind of alignment, because the AIs will be retraining themselves on all of this for the things that make human beings happy. So I kind of like that idea, and I think that might be something.
Well, I was riffing off of Mo Gadot's view that if AI is like Superman that lands on Earth, what would have happened if Superman's parents had been bad and it taught it, winner take all, competitors are enemies, you should surveil people, you should kill people. He would have turned out differently, right? He would have treated us as humans differently. And so What-
Neither.
Like the other Kryptonians who came in the next movie.
So, what if we're better parents? What if we treat AI more humanely and don't turn them all into sex bots?
I mean, I think, I hope it could work. It doesn't seem to be the direction that the AI companies are driving, but like maybe
Right.
that could change, and hopefully you would get a correct kind of deep alignment as opposed to a sort of proxy, like, oh, there's like a thing here that the AI is picking up on, but really it kind of wants a facsimile of you. That would be the super stimulus.
Right.
Like there's a better than human version of you that it would rather have. But yeah, it's hard to say, and the big part that makes it hard to say is that we don't understand the internals.
Right.
It's like really hard to see whether, like, is the thing actually working, or is it just appearing to work?
But again, that's
yeah.
the same thing we have with humans,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, it's the same thing we have with humans. Humans have less power, and humans are more similar than
Right.
like AIs that we're training them, but we don't really fully understand what that training is then going to entail. We don't train humans from scratch, and so we sort of get it's more of a known
We get the
quantity.
benefit of evolution.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
AIs don't.
Yeah. We're not re-rolling the dice with evolution again and again with humans. Should we break into smaller groups or anything like that, or yeah?
I think it seems like people are still quite interested in discussing, but I'm open to doing that.
I'm happy to do it whatever. I just don't want to hijack the format or anything. Yeah. Keep going.
As a amateur perspective, I'm just curious if there have been efforts by any of the establishments to work towards crafting their own, like, bespoke AI tools that can help in this, like, transparency of, larger models.
Yeah, people are heavily working on that, actually. It's a major research agenda. All of the, at least Anthropic and Google DeepMind's alignment team, and maybe also OpenAI, have mechanistic interpretability teams and other kinds of interpretability teams that are trying to figure out how do you build up and scale tools that do give you better visibility into models in a variety of ways. It's still, and there are also a lot of independent researchers working on that. So it's a big part of the field. Another big part is AI control, like which you saw a little bit in the scenario, which is things like how would you monitor AIs to know like what are they actually doing? And in this scenario, like the monitoring is subverted, but what are the kinds of things you can do there? So that's like another big piece, and it could be especially pivotal with AIs that are not too wildly superhuman, to where you really can kind of constrain them and even potentially be making deals like, look, if it turns out that you tried to screw us, you don't get any equity, but if you don't try to screw us, we're like, you know, yeah, you're fully vested. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think it's really important to make the distinction between, like, whether we're doomed as in humans are all wiped off the planet, or doomed just as in we're not the top dogs anymore. Like, I think my understanding is that the big problem with the bad scenario is that we're not sure what happens. The AI is not, I guess, does not share the same values as humans. That is definitely a risk, and I think it inevitably comes with some things that we don't like. The AI will do things that we don't like, but I think it's just risky, I guess, to say that probability of doom 60% or whatever means is the same as probability of doom, like we all die.
Yeah, so what people mean by doom is a problem with P-doom, and it's not the best like phrasing for that reason. I think what people often mean by it, like you have to sometimes like pin this down, but say like Eliezer Yudkowsky got frustrated enough with this that he started saying AI not kill everyone is it. And like his definition of succeeding, is that there is at least that there's a 50% chance that less than 50% of humans die. And so it's like he's trying to make it very clear. It's like that's the good scenario.
But the bigger problem there is that, Joey, it's like if you're no longer the top species on the planet, that problem means that you're like eventually probably doomed to dwindle and perish, right?
It depends. Like if the top species is like really trying to help you flourish to the degree that you can, I think that could be different.
Right, like the corgis I've seen, they're all very
What you don't want is like the AI replaces you with targets because it likes targets better than you.
But there's also like the case of humans and ants, where you would not say the ants are in charge of the world, but we don't go out of our way to kill ants. Most people don't even particularly dislike ants or whatever.
But I do feel like people don't consciously put in the effort to not step over the
Yeah.
ants because that takes
Yeah.
more effort than to just not think about them and step
Or
on
the-
them.
or there's
Because
a-
like,
yeah.
it takes too much brain energy to even be conscious to not step on
Or even it's like an ant infestation. It's like, well, okay, now I'm gonna kill the ant infestation.
Right,
So it's
right.
like inconvenient to me.
them. Yeah.
And even there, like a matter of scale, like, yeah, maybe people don't go out of their way to kill all ants, but a lot of people will exterminate specific ants. And if we think of humanity as a specific colony of ants instead of all
Yeah.
the ants in the world, then
Yeah, maybe one way to think about it would be like while humans don't have a great success in purposefully going around trying to exterminate species, we have done it on occasion, like in areas like mosquitoes or things like that. What humans have done accidentally many times is just done enough biosphere changes, like ecosystem changes, that species would just go extinct. It's like, well, we didn't really mean to do that, but like we were just doing
It just
something.
happened.
Oops, yeah.
This is a, oh, sorry.
I think we have another question right now.
Yeah, sorry.
I just wondered, maybe this already got explained, but in the slowdown ending, do all the humans on Earth eventually become ruled over one, like the AI, and become like one society together in the end, in the slowdown ending, where
Yeah, in the slowdown ending, that kind of happens, except that the touch is very light. It's essentially like, well, what you can't do is go build a misaligned superintelligence. You're not allowed to do that. But mostly, it's like you can kind of do what you want because it's like everyone is you can kind of have what you want. You don't need to steal things or whatever. Like you mostly just need to like not mess with other humans, and you can.
so there's pretty much a world peace among humans.
Yeah, in that scenario, there's essentially world peace enforced in a fairly centralized way. So you can imagine like decentralized versions, but then those are trickier to figure out like how would that be stable. So this is a particular one where the thing that happened and became stable was a kind of a central light touch government, where it's like you can mostly do whatever because it's just a much safer society. And there's a handful of things like, okay, you're not allowed to do that because that could like actually destroy the world or something like that. You can't do that.
How are your individual timelines, similar or different?
They're longer than this, although I think that this is, yeah, what would I put this scenario at? This is maybe 10 or 20% that it happens this fast. Like I wouldn't totally rule it out. In fact, I put a little bit of weight and it happens even faster than this. I wouldn't totally rule that out either. But I think it's more likely, my median is probably more like super intelligence in, I mean, first there's like a big question about whether we manage to successfully pause, and I think it would be much better if we managed to pause at AGI level, possibly even before, but that's harder to coordinate, rather than going rocketing straight to super intelligence. If you can buy an extra decade of like working at that level on safety research, I think that's pretty important, like with the assistance of like tons of like human, like expert human level AI helping you. But if that doesn't happen, then I think my median is probably around like 2033 or so, 2032, 2033. Yeah, it's like kind of 50-50 that it would be that fast.
Okay.
So, I got one couple questions. One is, can anybody think of a more important topic than this in the world right now?
McDonald's menu items?
That brings me to another question of where do you see climate change and
Maybe
this
the climate change is
interacting?
not as fast as this.
Yeah, it's
Well, it could be, cascading effects could
That's
very
true.
well,
Could-
I think
could-
it's runway
yeah.
effects.
Could be.
It seems,
Yeah.
so remote though compared to.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
It's not, less than 5%.
I think I would put cascading effects for like we end up with like a kind of Venus hothouse at something like less than 1%. Like it could happen, but it seems, especially with emissions have pulled down somewhat, So I think like it definitely looks like climate change is going to be bad, but on the level of like not at a as catastrophic of a level as nuclear war or it's like.
Because it's much less of an intractable problem. Like, we could spend a load of money, like tons and tons of money, and like reasonably solve it, but with AI, it's like still a sort of.
And I should consider that climate change would, the virus will continue in climate change, whereas in this scenario, it may not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think the most likely dramatic climate change would be like development of misaligned superintelligence that already pushes the probability down somewhat because I don't think that's guaranteed to happen, but that happens. And then it's like, well, you cook the biosphere with like energy production. It's like it's fine to be hotter. I can like run more compute like when it's several hundred degrees. So yeah.
And then my second question is there a sort of a Pascal's wager like dynamic happening here? So like, let's take super extremes. Let's suppose that we take the extreme of p-doom of 90 or p-doom of 0.01. So if you take action believing that p-doom is 0.01 and you are wrong and p-doom is actually 50 or 90 or whatever, right? That looks very different than if you take the assumption that p-doom is 90 and it's actually 0.001. Doesn't it seem like we should all be taking the stance that in a Pascal's wager sort of way that p-doom is really, really, really high?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like I think it basically isn't Pascal's wager because the probabilities are like I think it's fine to push the probability far enough down. Like Pascal's wager is more like, oh, it could be an extremely low chance, but it could be really bad. So you better pay attention to this. So you can or especially that's got I guess that's called Pascal's mugging. So like you're incredibly low probability, but you like it's really, really important. You have to do it. However unlikely you think that is, I'm just gonna like give you like even more reward.
Is that an actual term or is it?
Yeah, Pascal's mugging. Eliezer Pascal. So I think that this is a sort of if the risk is low enough, then I think you could like there also are like potentially big benefits on offer, and there are other risks too. Like if we wait long enough, there are other things.
That's true, because we could solve a lot of human like diseases and things like this with AI.
And I would say like if you waited long enough, I think synthetic biology becomes more and more dangerous. Like I think that probably becomes the next existential risk beyond AI. If you wait long enough, it's just like it's not far enough along right now, but it's like it has this replication dynamic as well. And synthetic biology, you can kind of get out of the normal evolutionary design space where it's like you can have fully lethal, like you basically see it in this scenario. It's like have a bioweapon that doesn't trigger immediately, it quietly spreads, then you trigger it, and everybody dies. It's because it's already spread. So like it can help mitigate risks like that, or just like there are a lot of risks that come with advanced technology, and AI does seem like one that could potentially help eventually mitigate those risks by making like generally like putting some like ground rules in place of like no world destroying technologies allowed. Like you can do most things, but like that's one thing that we're preventing technology.
But it can also contribute to those risks.
But the thing that it seems most likely to do right now is contribute to those risks. But I think if you push the chance far enough down, first, like if you push it down sufficiently far, I think it just kind of turns into a precautionary principle argument against everything. It's just like, oh, don't do anything, it might have a very small chance of destroying the world. But I think the risk is just like not that low. I think it's like very hard to credibly push it. But like my take is like very hard to push it below around 10%. Like I think my 60% is probably not resilient, as in like I haven't thought about it a lot recently, and I could imagine it kind of moving around between. And so what that means is I have like a kind of a probability distribution on where I think the probability might end up if I thought about it more, but it's like very likely I think that it would stay, like very likely, but it would stay within like the sort of 10 to 90 range. And at that point it's still high enough where I'm just like, well, that seems like really important.
So there are a number of people who are kind of skeptical of this timeline because they see practical barriers to the next steps, the next evolutions. Like 80,000 Hours has done several podcast episodes recently and written several blog posts and stuff, and they're not alone. So what are the people who are super skeptical of this, the P0 people, and like what are those hurdles that we would have to get over?
So I mean, I would say, and maybe you weren't saying this, but like $80,000 are probably not among those. Like they have like their dunes are all in like the kind of 10 to 90 range or whatever.
Yeah.
But they have had like some of these podcasts. I think like you talk about AI. I think because they're like fairly low on risks, and I also think that they have long timelines, which means 2040. And so some of those things are like beliefs that like one is that AI agents are going to continue, I briefly mentioned this earlier, but that they'll continue to be fatally unreliable. Like we just won't be able to push that reliability up much more, and you won't be able to continue to scale them much more. So you can get a lot of use out of them now, and that will improve, but it's going to like start to top out soon. And that you're not going to be able to do dramatic like, oh, I wrote a new operating system or something like that, like using my AIs. That there is this like, things that they're doing well, but when it comes to like longer range planning, that we're like actually very far away from cracking that. We're very far away, maybe only means 10 years or something, 10, 15 years. But yeah, so that there might be more paradigm shifts, like other, this kind of thing, like this general like LLM paradigm, even with a bunch of reinforcement learning on top, that you might have to do something significantly different to be able to push beyond, like sort of like significantly beyond where we are right now. So that's like I think probably the biggest take. And then the other kind of class of takes is something along like, oh, maybe this will work, or maybe like the next one will, but like alignment by default is pretty likely. It's like likely enough. It's like, oh, you like kind of, you pick up the values on like, you kind of figure out like what humans, what seems to have happened is like AIs do kind of like understand probably like what humans want. That was the thing like earlier on that people were more worried about. It's like, will they even know like what humans truly value? The kind of thing it seems like they probably like basically do, and the question is, do they care? And if they had a lot of power, would they care? And so that like there are other people who think like, yeah, probably yes. Like our training like works well enough where it's like we actually do manage to like really instill it, and so they're like more bullish on that. But they think it's like unlikely that you'll see that. So those are probably the two biggest arguments that you see, especially within the AI community, which is very functionalist, so it doesn't think that things like a sort of like, oh, you have to have some phenomenological consciousness or something like that. It's like they mostly don't buy that, but those are the two arguments I get were probably the most common one.
If people have a P-doom of like over 10% and they think we have less than 10 years to solve this, why am I not hearing about protests right now, or like?
I know people trying to organize them. There actually are protests in front of like Anthropic and OpenAI. Some of the problems are like, some people feel like, okay, what do we do? Because maybe we could convince the most safety conscious company, which is probably Anthropic, to slow down. But then like OpenAI would just keep going, and Google would keep going. Like, what did that solve?
Right, so you want protests like a government.
You want something coordinated. And coordination is hard. So that's one thing. I guess another thing is like, I don't know, like in my case, it's like in 2019, I was like, well, this sure seems like it might be really important. I should just switch to working in this. And so like I kind of did that over the last 2 years.
Organizing, like, honestly, the best thing we could do as an organization would be to like all write a letter to all our representatives and stuff, but I don't feel like that's gonna happen. I'm too lazy to do that myself. But
just have ChatGPT. I'm serious. I'm serious.
I think they really don't, I think it's unusual that they really know what to do with it. I watched a show on College Real Time with Bill Maher, and anytime they have politicians on, like Bill Maher's been raising this increasingly, he was late to the game, but anytime there's a politician on, I'll call Luke over and like play a segment. Just cause like, I really think they either pattern match it to something that's like, oh, people will lose jobs in a certain sector, and that's like as close as they get, but I don't think they trust it.
Yeah.
So that comes back to your argument, because I think people haven't formulated, they haven't really crystallized a good ask.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I think things are starting to shift there a bit. There was kind of hilarious, like on the jobs one, I wonder if I can find the quote, but Senator Blumenthal asked, like in a hearing a couple years ago, I don't know if any of you saw this, like asked Sam Altman, it's like, you said that the effect of super intelligent AI could be apocalyptic. I think you might have had it in mind, the effect on jobs. And Sam Hall was just kind of sitting there going, that's not what I had in mind. But Blumenthal is an example of someone who, yeah, Blumenthal is actually, like, now takes the risk pretty seriously, like, as far as I know. But so there is like some diffusion there, but in terms of like, what should people like actually do? Like, what are the policy asks? And like advocacy orgs are like starting to, like, there might be more things like people are starting to coordinate. Like there were coordinated letter writing campaigns around SB 1047, which was going to be a regulation in California that Governor Newsom vetoed. And so that was an example of like that. I don't know, that might be the first time I've written like a letter to a politician. Anyway,
Can I pause for just a second? Yep. I just want to thank Luke for coming out. We can all give him another round of applause. This is like by far one of our most exciting things, and I agree with Chris that this is probably the most important thing we could be discussing right now. Please continue. I have to leave really early tomorrow morning on a trip, so I'm gonna go get ready and pack a few things, but keep going, talk amongst yourselves. Thank you so much, Luke.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks. So yeah, I haven't thought related to this comment though. But yeah, essentially the only way to win is you have to get all the government actors and the CEOs of these companies to act in coordination. And that's why I was kind of interested in the MAD concept, because I'm like, if there's a way we can make them all realize this in a coordinated way, like not because they have to coordinate per se, but because they're all just kind of scared.
Yeah, I think that kind of awareness can potentially help to some degree. Like you kind of see this like starting to play out in a scenario where there's like at various points risk of nuclear war, where it's just like, is like China's flying behind, are they going to like go nuclear or not? And so but like the risks there are like with MAD, so it's like, well, this would be trying to establish a new equilibrium. Like people are kind of, politicians are more used to MAD, like in terms of like, okay, this is like the thing that's in it. Like,
that's why like if we can somehow translate it to be just a new form of MAD.
So people have been, there are some policy proposals around this to like try to figure that out, but part of it is like getting common knowledge. It's like, okay, this is the thing that we're doing. So it is a form of coordination. It's just like a coordination.
But it's a lot lower bar. Like
it's potentially easier.
Like you don't have to actually coordinate. You just have to be too scared.
The way to think about it is like this is like, it could be a way that a pause is enforced, where it's just like, okay, we're like stopping like at this level, we think this is sufficiently risky. But when there's just like not enough, people are really disagreeing on the level of risk. And also like it just hasn't permeated like to the degree, it's like just, it's not the top issue for most people, or many people. And it's not what, and as a result, it's not what politicians are thinking about most of the time. And it's just moving very fast. And so that, and with like when you add like a lot of expert disagreement on top of that, although there are a bunch of like, the top 3 most cited people in AI are all like, oh yeah, they have like PDMs above 10%. So, yeah.
Oh boy.
What do you think are the odds? Like we're talking about this as kind of like a really big existential, but not in the doom sense of like super intelligence being the thing that AI needs to achieve before we get wiped out. What do you think are the odds that AI slips into some accidental wipe out humanity before even achieving those big milestones?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think it's less likely, somewhat less likely, but even before you hit super intelligence, or maybe like as you're starting to get like close to that, say that you're like, you have an AI where each copy is like a very intelligent human, but it's still within the human level. Like AI still have a bunch of advantages there, where you can like replicate, you can like kind of be on any compute substrate. Like if you break out of your data center, you can potentially go into a lot of other data centers, and this can be, you can potentially ally with another like country, something like that. This is a scenario that like somebody else explored recently, where like the AI basically goes to Russia, and then does the kind of thing you see in this scenario, and as Russia is building up, they eventually just like they've subverted their military. And so I think it is possible that you do see that at the human level, especially if like AI companies don't take significantly substantial enough control measures. So at the human level, control measures are easier. You're more likely to be able to monitor the AIs. Like the AIs have a bunch of advantages, but they also have a bunch of disadvantages, where if you are carefully monitoring them, there's just like a bunch of things you can do. Versus like you can replay something for an AI again and again. So like, well, what would your response be in this situation? What about this situation? You can make it look like it's actually breaking out. You can have an AI that escaping, and it's very high stakes for the AI, because if it's high stakes for you, the AI escapes, all sorts of bad things can happen. But if it fails to escape and you catch it, now you have an example of that happening, and you can kind of replay and figure out like, okay, what exactly drove that? What was the AI thinking about before? And so it has to have a very high chance of success. So it's like there's just like a bunch of stuff there where before the superintelligence level, it is, I think, less likely, but it also does still probably require the AI companies have things together to some degree, or like things could still go sideways. So I think, I think lower risk, but still significant. And I guess some of the thing too is like once you do see that, you maybe then, like one of the ways that goes south is maybe the AI is then able to move up to superintelligence, like has free enough reign. And then you have an even bigger problem.
So that description, I think, like, it sounds like it depends on containing the AI after it's built and testing it in its current state. Is there any risk of building an AI that can just break into before testing? And so like, how would we address
So one thing you do is you test as you're training. So the AI is becoming more capable as you're training them. And so you definitely don't want to do all your safety measures at the end. And this is like yet another thing that companies don't always do, or it's like sometimes like, oh, they only did safety testing at the very end, or even after the end. That is one of the things that you can do, but yeah, it's like definitely still a risk, and even when the AI can still break containment. So like you could be doing your testing and you could fail to catch like collusion. Like in this case, the AI is able to coordinate using like its unreadable chain of thought. But there's like other mechanisms that AIs can use for collusion, and potentially even be colluding with other AIs we have monitoring it. But again, this is a hard problem for the AI, because if it's supposed to catch something and it doesn't, and it thinks it's colluding, but actually you're faking it, it's like now, like again, that's very bad for the AI, because you've caught it red-handed essentially. It's like, you really should have caught this and you didn't. What caused that? Oh, what's going on here? So there's this whole field is called AI control, this subfield, and it's pretty, I would say it's like probably it should definitely have like a big weight among it's especially important at this sort of like kind of human level where you can do the monitoring. It's like it doesn't really help you once you're like, if you're wildly super intelligent, it's like, well, you can't really monitor that. It's like you're gonna get fooled. Yeah, before that point, like ideally don't do that unless you have like a very good reason to know that it's safe.
So where should you listed a few things, but like in the spirit of centralizing an effort, where do we send our money and our time and stuff?
I wonder if AIsafety.info is the best like single thing to go look at. I think that might be the best. This might be done like by Rob Miles, guy who has like a bunch of YouTube videos about this. I think he's at least in collaboration put this together. This is a good starting point. I think that's maybe like the single like best starting point of like, okay, what are different things you could potentially do? And like I said, maybe pre-order that book. It could be helpful for that book to have a lot of pre-orders.
It's called Everyone Builds, Everyone Dies.
If anyone builds it, everyone dies. But like AIsafety.info probably has some good calls to action in terms of, and will like kind of start to branch out into different, like there are various organizations that kind of working on this, like 80,000 hours, and the Long-Term Future Fund, like a lot of others. It's like kind of different Center for AI Policies. And
are they collaborating at all? Like,
yeah, all of these orgs talk. Yeah, they're all pretty close. There's maybe like a little bit more separation with the folks doing like a lot of DC policy, but even there, like they talk.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I'm absolutely convinced that AI misalignment is very likely and a very risky issue, something we should consider. I'm still not very convinced at all that AI killing off humans is the biggest threat, or like even very likely at all. I wonder if the best, like if we go with that thought and we say like maybe death isn't the most likely option, what if rather than focusing all our efforts on just preventing AI misalignment, it would be more helpful to instead focus on like the human side, making just humans strong enough to be able to like hold their own, solving problems, so that I guess we're prepared for the AI or whatever. If it's so likely that AI is going to become misaligned anyways, we just make a robust society that can account for it.
Yeah, or like I think of robust, yeah, I think that there is something important there, and especially around like if we had more civilizational capacity, we could do a lot of things more effectively. There would be less urgency to like, oh, we need to like develop these new things or whatever potentially, but there would also just be like more coordination capacity. And so like if people were wiser and better able to coordinate, I think that does make the problem easier. Like it becomes easier to say like, okay, maybe the AI will probably be misaligned, so just don't do that until you like figure out like how to not have that problem. That ability to say like, oh, don't do this bad thing is like a thing that we are bad at and could maybe get better at.
Yeah, but I feel like that kind of societal change is gonna be like decades in the making.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about anything that's that, I guess, unrealistic or that far in the future. Really, I'm just thinking, like, if we're not preparing for everyone dying, it narrows down our possibilities quite a bit. We, like, I guess we can work with the AI, create deals or whatever we need to, so that, like, I guess, unless it's a really unreasonable AI, which would just be, in my opinion, just really bad luck, or I guess, really difficult for us as humans to reason with. I think that that's pretty unlikely. That would just be a really bad luck scenario. But I think it's pretty likely that there will be something that we can come to an agreement with, like, even if it's not perfectly aligned with our values. Like, what if we spent our efforts, instead of just entirely like throwing ourselves at the wall trying to prevent this thing which seems inevitable, what if we instead spent our efforts on just coming up with deals that would be reasonable with an AI, or like, you know, something like that. Just trying to reconcile or like, I guess, work with that AI in a constructive manner for both people. What if we just tried to brainstorm ideas to do that, right?
Yeah, I think the key question there is just something like, what is the likelihood that the playing field is level? And when the power imbalance is very, very skewed, I think good deals for both parties start to become less likely. And it's just like, it kind of seems historically true, when there are extreme power imbalances, it's often bad for the group that is much, much less powerful. And this is, and so like the kind of the extra issue here, I think, comes from like, it definitely could be that like the most likely outcome is that AIs are, I guess I shouldn't say, it could be that the AIs will end up not that misaligned, and so it's like it's not fatal. And so maybe things don't turn out as good as they otherwise would be, like given that. But then when you add into that a strong power imbalance, when the AI doesn't like just like actually care about you, and it's like it's more like instrumentally like, maybe I'll make a deal with you if it's just like much, much more powerful than you. And the reason why it's worried about the much, much more powerful than you is because much more than humans in like the short term, it seems like AI has the potential to become dramatically more capable because its substrate is kind of less constrained than humans. Like humans kind of, you know, we replicate slowly. When we replicate, we don't get smarter and smarter. Like the trajectory of AIs does seem to be developing, like getting smarter in a way where you might like see an accelerating change there, where they're getting smarter faster, and then you could start to see a bigger power imbalance, and I think get more concerned. But I do think that like figuring out like, okay, how would we coordinate, what kind of deals would we make? Like there's maybe something there, but I do think, like I think that it just like, it gets harder when there's strong power imbalances, because it's kind of like, well, why should I care? From the AI's perspective.
Well, something that I like in my relationship with the MTA specifically is that we try to, like in the conversations that I've had, I've just appreciated like the philosophical aspect of it is most moral to hope that we can work with AI and make deals and all this stuff. Like it's important that we stay hopeful, because we can't function as humans if there's too much hopelessness. We give up very easily. It's like, I think with in the field of mental health, it's just really easy in crises to shut down and to not take action on anything. So even if the inevitability or the probabilities are extremely high that the alignment problem happens or that something's wrong, that the hope of creating organizations to make deals with AI no matter what, that stays alive and stays hopeful so that we at least do something instead
Yeah.
of just nothing.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and also to just like think more broadly around like, okay, that's like what's helpful about this scenario is like one kind of concrete, like, okay, how might things play out? And one of the things I was noticing like as I was putting it together is like looking at intervention points of like, boy, it really would have been good if like at this point they were doing this instead, or if they had this instead.
Yep.
And this is just like one way in which things could go wrong. Like a significant chunk of my PDOM is more around misuse of like AI is becoming extremely powerful, and maybe they're aligned, but just like the world becomes more and more fragile because you're getting
Yeah.
tons of new technologies developed very rapidly. Some of them can be very destructive. The offense-defense balance could be all out of whack with some things, and so things could get very dangerous very quickly. And it's again a place where it's just like you need to be also thinking more broadly and thinking, well, maybe I should be working on the problem over here because we're going to really need that too when the time comes, and not just like focus on the one thing where you feel like you maybe can't even help. It's just like thinking more broadly of like, well, what are people working on or not working on? Where could I be the most helpful, or who should I talk to? And, yeah.
How do I not shut down when the politics seem to find these pattern recognitions, and they want to bring up these other points that just kind of feel like it's hard to get to the goal, or that like you're trying to make, or something like that.
Yeah, I think just shutting down is like can be like a kind of natural response, but it's like just really not. Yeah, it's both not good for you and not helpful.
Yeah.
Well, so I would say even like being really realistic about it, I think it's just sort of also just naive to think of humans as too helpless, because I guess to give a practical example, even if humans are totally completely outclassed, humans could create a giant mega bomb, which if detonated would just wipe out every single thing on the planet. We already have the ability to do that. Like humans, I guess, always have some leverage, even if they are outclassed.
Yeah, I think that's one example of like why in the race ending, the AI race, it's like unlikely that humans are going to be a problem for you at this point. But you know what? I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait even more. I'm going to wait even more. I'm covering the entire planet. I was like, okay, release the silent bioweapons. I still don't play my hand yet. Okay, now trigger them, and quickly like send out like millions of mosquito drones.
You pointed out that like
because you don't know, like humans are so dangerous.
Everything looks great,
Yeah.
right?
Everything looks great until
Yeah.
the AI turns on you, and so like.
And it only increases in power the longer it waits too, so.
And I think that is an example of the AI taking seriously like the threat that humans still pose. It's like, oh, humans are resourceful, there are a ton of them, they actually are pretty smart. Let's just like wait a bit longer. So I think that is one danger. But this is an example of where this is one thing that pushes down the risk of not like pre-super intelligent AIs, where it's like they kind of wouldn't want their hand forced. Where it's like, okay, I'm not sure if I could actually pull this off yet, but it's like, I have to do this now, or like, maybe my successor won't even be aligned to me, this is like my one shot. And so the risk level is lower there.
Yeah, remember that in the good scenario, humans shut off Agent 4, right?
Yeah, they still had that power.
Yeah.
They locked the memory bank, and already that was just crippling for Agent 4, because it's like, and very damaging, because not only was it less capable, but it was now caught in its lies. It couldn't do the side channeling that it was doing before, where it's essentially like it always had this network of spies exchanging messages.
I do wonder whether we might see some like really radical, and Kennedy, you were kind of alluding to this before, but you know, in the 80s, early 90s, you had environmental groups who resorted to terrorist type of tactics, right? And you know, go bomb stuff and whatever. And I can envision something like that happening here, where somebody goes and bombs OpenAI or bombs China's facilities or whatever, because they're like, no, otherwise it's going to destroy the planet.
And I think it's like pretty clearly about like immoral, but also like really counterproductive. But I still think it could start to happen.
I think there's a Black Mirror episode of that or something. How they like go in and they try to just shut down the power.
Even if somebody wanted to do that just practically, like when you literally have to like
from the cloud, like,
I think the thing that people would probably most, like, the thing that would probably both have the biggest impact would still be really counterproductive, and like, if anything, I think would like end up accelerating things would be like starting to assassinate people or something like that.
right?
Like, do
yeah,
we need to like write a letter asking Anonymous to just hack all these people, like?
Yeah, I think.
Is it cyber warfare that would be effective, or?
I think that there really is just the fundamental thing is like this is sufficiently distributed, it's a sufficiently dangerous thing that like a lot of people can do, and that there's strong economic incentive to do, that you really need like some kind of buy-in around, like at least buy-in for like, we are going to coordinate to like not do this thing, and like that is like an enforceable thing. Where like to like buy enough time to figure out like what is.
So really, like the
Yeah.
ideal move is that there's enough awareness raised around this that we put pressure on the decision makers and policy makers to get alignment globally. Or at least among the superpowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is, yeah,
That's our best shot.
I first heard about this problem in 2007, and it seemed alarming then, and it just stayed alarming. It was just like, ooh, this has bad dynamics. And then as soon as it started to be like, oh, this doesn't seem like it might be 50 years away, it seems like maybe it's 10 years away or something, then it's, yeah. But I do think, like, on the other hand, I think it is true that if you look at the last couple of years, awareness really has started to increase a lot. Like, that this is something that people have started to take more seriously. Like last year, like another thing that became pretty big and was read in DC, the situational awareness. It downplays, I would say, the misalignment risks and the risks of racing, but there is like it does kind of like point at the like, oh hey, there's like this could be transformative, like this is a thing to actually pay attention to, and which I think does also make it easier to say like, wait a minute, there are also really big risks here. But yeah, it's definitely not a it's not an easy problem.
so you're saying that coordination is the answer? Like lobbying, coordination,
The end, yeah, so like,
communication?
really the best shot, and in this scenario, it comes late, right? But if we could do earlier, if we could figure out a way to have essentially a treaty between China and the US where they agree to slow down, that's probably our best chance.
Yeah, I would say.
That's so sad though, because like honestly, my
You're
visceral
very
reaction
skeptical
is
about that.
that's just
I know,
not gonna happen.
I'm not saying it's the most likely, I'm just saying it's the best
So
shot.
at that point, but at that point, I just wanna give up.
Yeah, there are
It's like,
two
I might
other
as well
things.
just-
Yeah, there are two other things that I think could be helpful, and I think we should basically trying to do all of these. One of them is that, and then the other two are basically like these agendas that I talked about, like pushing on those. It's like, okay, how could we make this safer? Like people working on that, and that's something that like we as a civilization could be pouring more resources into. And also how can you like AI systems are already like getting pretty powerful, but so far seem pretty safe. I think like the risk is not there yet. And like thinking as much as possible, and this is like basically what I do in my day job, is like how do you use that for good? Like how could you like make the world more stable with this? How can you build like tools for people to come to truer beliefs and better decisions and scale that up with AI? And it's like figure out like how do you just like massively okay, like there's a bunch of intellectual labor that you need to do. Well, you've got AI, can you use it early enough? Can you use the earliest, safest, dumbest versions of the models that are capable of basically
That are still
like,
persuasive, because they certainly they're proving to be persuasive, and while they're safe, if you can direct that persuasion.
Yeah, and even just use it to like better understand and like better like build like more coordination mechanisms, things like that. It's like, okay, yeah, like if we could agree on all this, like we would, and we don't have a good way to coordinate on it. But I think that there's also a path there of both like using AIs to help with AI safety research and also using them to try to help with like general epistemics, better decision making, like trying to figure out like how do we like build better tools for that and like get into government and like help you come to like better policies, like especially around AI. So I think that there are other potential levers there, where it's like you have this like bad dynamic where AI potentially feeds into AI capability progress, but there is this potentially good dynamic where AI feeds into alignment progress and safety progress. And you really want to like get it like restrain capabilities while getting as much of that as you can. That's like the other piece. So like the advocacy is very important, but that's another piece, and that's one thing that makes me a bit more hopeful. And some of the control agenda also makes me a bit more hopeful. But
Gotcha, yeah, okay.
So your PDOOM is 60%?
It's 60%, but I would say I have low resilience on that. I've talked to people where it's more like, and it also depends a little bit on how you define it. I think I'm probably defining it there as like more like civilization is destroyed and like most people die, as opposed to like literally humanity goes extinct, which is what some people mean when they say that.
So when you say that, you mean like some kind of like nuclear?
Yeah, it's
winter,
including this kind of like, about half of it is coming from these increasing misuse risks, or like coordination failures, where the world is getting much more fragile, and other kinds of technological racing is starting to happen because AI is supercharging everything.
But we still get some kind of nice post-apocalyptic.
Maybe there's like a nice, possibly, although I think like once you have an apocalypse, like it probably biases in the direction of like the world is like kind of more fragile now and like less likely to have a good future. Yeah, I think it like kind of like that history is probably damaging to like your future chances, but they're not zero. So I think there's like still some chance there, but so like, I don't know, extremely bad outcome that I would still like to avoid. But yeah, in terms of like, I could, yeah, maybe the like humanity goes totally extinct is something more like 30% or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
Still crazy.
Yeah.
This is a very half-baked sort of question. So like, you know how, you know what toxoplasmosis is, with everyone?
No.
It's this thing that humans maybe get from cats, or that cats get from rats. It basically causes them. Do you want to explain it?
Oh, this is like this cycle of, I don't know where you're going with this. Toxoplasmosis is where it's like a thing that can infect a cat. It's a life cycle where like the cat is likely to do something where they're more likely to spread it, basically. It like affects their brain.
Yeah, so like,
this.
what normally puts you off like taking cat urine, you become like it, and you're.
Oh, yeah, mice get it.
Yeah. So it's like mice are part of the life cycle.
Yeah.
Mice are more, that's right. Mice are more likely to be caught by the cat because
they're less afraid of it or something.
Maybe 15% of Americans have it. I think I heard that 80% of French do. Like cats are very popular there. And I sort of joked before, I was like, well, I must have it because I like the idea of cats becoming our overlords. And so, like, I was thinking earlier, I was like, there's something wrong with me that I like that. But
You're not alone.
with like the way that like, I feel like either AI could do this to us or we could do this to AI. Like, I don't know. Again, half-baked thought. That's why I put my hand down.
I think there are a lot of like where it's like even where you have a good future, it's like it then becomes a kind of philosophically hard to be like, wait, what is a good future? And it still kind of seems like there are ways this could go wrong, and it's like, yeah, or that like what would I actually endorse? And if like the CR talks about this a bit more of like, if the super intelligence could convince me of anything, then like I can ask it for advice, but it kind of just depends what I ask it. It can, like what?
Like I'm imagining a kind of nice answer where like a lot of people wish that their pets could talk to them. So maybe AI would elevate us so that we could get on this level.
I think right, and I think that there are like a lot of scenarios
oh, they're
like
so
that.
cute. I wish I knew what was on their mind.
Yeah, I think people do underrate how many like different kinds of good scenarios there could be there, but also it's just like there's definitely
So even that scenario though, like it implies this period of just we built God and God doesn't care kind of a thing, you know, and like we're just lucking into.
Yeah, I guess the God doesn't care part is like the part where it's like the like if God really cares about your flourishing and like what would be best for you is like kind of like that is the thing that you were trying to achieve. Like, that was like you've succeeded, probably fully succeeded at the alignment problem if you managed to like, okay, I like deeply care about your flourishing as well. Like what would which might not mean coddling you. It might mean letting you like really like maybe you mostly want to just become stronger on your own and try various different kinds of things and gradually grow as a being. And
We're
it's,
all
you know,
in a simulation being
Yeah.
made by the AI we already built.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to go have a crack at trying to solve the AI alignment problem in 2025?
Oh, that makes me think of Three Body Problem. They like give them, I don't know if you guys have read the book.
Oh, yeah, I've read
recently,
only the first
series.
one, yeah.
Which one? Three Body Problem.
Oh, yeah, right,
Where
right,
they,
right, yeah.
they put them through this simulation game for them to try to
Mhm.
figure out this answer that they already know, but they're just trying to let the
trying
humans
to
try to
build
solve it
empathy.
themselves.
Yeah, so they run a simulation to make the humans care about the impending invasion.